Chapter 64. Mo Shi found out what was happening in the village, but he didn't do anything. For the sake of his parents, Lu Wang traversed 500 kilometers of wilderness and brought people back to rescue them. His filial piety was commendable, but for his parents, he had betrayed his brother, who had gone through life and death with him. This made Mo Shi feel disgusted. It was already good enough that Mo Shi didn't help those zombies. How could he expect to save them? After looking from afar for a while, Mo Shi stopped paying attention to them. Instead, he turned his gaze to the west side of the village. His pupils turned blood red. The zombie aura at the west side of the village was 100 times stronger than the zombie aura. Mo Shi's telekinesis couldn't reach that far, but he guessed that there should be a blood pool there. But he didn't act immediately. Let's see if there was a stronger existence here. At this time, in the center of the village, Lu Wang saw that the strong mutated zombies had already surrounded them. He called out to his parents behind him. Go into the house at the back. His parents hurriedly hid in the house at the back. Lu Wang's eyes were red, and the genetic weapon in his hand was already condensed. The 100-meter-long whip had a sharp blade that shone with cold light. Every time the long whip was swung, hundreds of zombies would be cut in half. But the zombies he killed were only mutated zombies. As for the stronger mutated zombies, they all jumped and dodged his long whip. Lu Wang had only shown the strength of a level 2 hunter when he was surrounded by millions of zombies at base C1. But this time, the hunter group followed him out. Mo Shi found that this guy was a level 4 hunter. But although a level 4 hunter was strong, the zombies surrounding him were all level 4 and 5 mutated zombies. Under the siege of these zombies, he quickly fell into a passive position. But even so, his eyes were red, and he fought with his life. He couldn't die. If he died, his parents wouldn't be able to escape. Thinking of this, he roared like a beast. The veins on his forehead bulged. He kept killing the zombies around him. At the entrance of the village, the rescue team had also appeared. When they saw that the person fighting the zombies in the village was Lu Wang, they were all enraged. Lu Wang also saw the humans at the village entrance. At first, he was extremely surprised. How could these people still be alive? He clearly knew how strong the claw-marked zombie was. It might have reached level 7 or even level 8. In front of the claw-marked zombie, these people were simply throwing their lives away. Soon, his gaze landed on Mo Shi. He understood that it was a mysterious expert. But soon, he thought that if the claw-marked zombie used the blood pool, its strength would be greatly increased. Most likely, it would rise to level 10. No matter how strong the mysterious man was, it was impossible for him to be a match for a level 10 mutated zombie. What was going on? But then, a glimmer of hope rose in his heart. He brandished his genetic weapon and forced back the zombies within 100 meters. He turned around and shouted to the people at the village entrance. I'm sorry, but what can I do? They captured my parents and forced me to lure the mysterious expert over. I didn't want this to happen. At the entrance of the village, most of the people looked on coldly. Another hunter replied, That's right. So this is the reason why you betrayed your brothers? Lu Wang shouted as he fought. No matter what, it's all my fault. If I die, I die. I only beg you to take my parents away. Everyone was silent. No one responded. Lu Wang didn't hear any response. His voice was already hoarse. Are you going to watch 2 civilians die tragically in front of you? Is this what you call humanity? Everyone was still silent. Now that 2 civilians were surrounded by zombies, should they save them? Of course they should. But the sons of these 2 civilians betrayed their brothers in order to save them. They didn't hesitate to sacrifice more than 50 lives. They even lured the mysterious expert into a trap set by the zombies. If they went to save them, wouldn't they be too despicable? Repay evil with good. How should they repay good? But if they just watched 2 civilians get trapped by zombies and didn't go to save them, they might not feel at ease in the future. In the end, their eyes fell on the deputy leader Guojutao. As the deputy leader, Guojutao should be the one making the decision. But Guojutao's eyes fell on Mo Shi. Everyone suddenly understood, and their eyes fell on Mo Shi. If the mysterious expert didn't forgive Lu Wang and they rashly went to save them, wouldn't they offend the mysterious expert? Mo Shi naturally felt everyone's gaze. His clear and cold eyes didn't even spare Lu Wang a glance. He said indifferently, "In the apocalypse, protecting yourself is the most important thing." Lu Wang was indeed a filial son. In order to save his parents, he crossed 500 kilometers of zombies and mutated beasts in the wilderness. Most people probably couldn't do it, but for his parents, he betrayed his brothers. To put it bluntly, it was selfish. For such people, he naturally wouldn't save them. Hearing Mo Shi's words, everyone put away their thoughts of saving them. Lu Wang's bloodshot eyes were filled with despair when he saw that no one had the slightest intention to save them. He roared hoarsely, "If you don't save my parents today, I won't let you go even if I die and become a ghost." A moment later, he was bitten by a strong mutated zombie on the back of his neck. With such injuries, he killed 3 strong mutated zombies in a row. Finally, under the virus infection, he couldn't hold on. 5 minutes later, he turned into a zombie. And it was directly a level 4 strong mutated zombie. After turning into a zombie, he suddenly turned his head and looked at the people at the entrance of the village. Then he roared for the first time since he became a zombie. He rushed towards Mo Shi and the others. When the others saw Lu Wang turn into a zombie, they rushed over with red eyes. They were all secretly shocked. Mo Shi slightly moved his telekinesis. Bang! Lu Wang's head suddenly exploded into a cloud of blood mist. At the same time, with Lu Wang's death, the other zombies also rushed towards Mo Shi and the others. Mo Shi slightly moved his telekinesis. Bang! Those strong mutated zombies below level 5, and all the mutated zombies, their heads exploded at the same time. After his telekinesis reached level 8, he could already use this move to easily kill all the strong mutated zombies below level 5. In his estimation, when his telekinesis reached level 10, even if he encountered a level 10 strong mutated zombie, he could also easily use this move to kill it. Everyone in the rescue team saw this scene, and they were all shocked. Even if this was not the first time they saw this move. But their hearts were still full of shock. After all, he didn't even need to move his fingers to kill so many strong and mutated zombies. This visual impact was too strong. Especially the 2 psychokinesis. With their telekinesis, it was a bit difficult to use this method to explode the heads of a few level 1 mutated zombies. The mysterious strong man exploded the heads of more than a dozen strong mutated zombies. They and the mysterious strong man were like heaven and earth. But Mo Shi didn't relax because of this. There were still 3 level 6 strong mutated zombies on the scene. These 3 level 6 strong mutated zombies, seeing this human standing still, exploded the heads of all the other strong mutated zombies. They were also scared. They looked at each other, let out a low roar, and then suddenly turned around at the same time and quickly fled. As they fled, they also let out a roar that shook the sky. Not far from the village, there was a small town. There were also many zombies in the town, wandering in the snow. Some of the zombies heard the roars and responded, "That's right, roar dash." Chapter 65. The 3 level 6 strong mutated zombies, after seeing Mo Shi explode the heads of the other zombies, showed fear in their gray eyes. They retreated quickly. At the same time, they roared at the sky. In the eyes of others, this was just the roar of a wild beast. But Mo Shi could understand that they were shaking the corpses. Translated, it was a cloud-piercing arrow. Thousands of troops came to meet. Mo Shi subconsciously raised his head and looked at the sky. Not far from the village, there was a small town. The roar of zombies also came from the town. A moment later, thousands of zombies, roaring like wild beasts, pounced towards the village. They rampaged, the snow behind them rising. It was a broken momentum, through a dried-up forest. The trees were smashed into pieces. Soon, they came to the entrance of the village and surrounded Mo Shi and the others. Roughly estimated, there were 4,000 to 5,000 zombies. Most of them were mutated zombies. As for the strong mutated zombies, there were more than 500 of them. But Emo did not pay attention to these zombies at all. But from the beginning to the end, his eyes were fixed on the western entrance of the village. Over there, in a huge blood pool with a diameter of 50 meters, a blood-red giant zombie, more than 50 meters long, had already crawled out. This giant zombie was not in human form. It was in the form of a giant scorpion. It had 8 blood-red long legs. On both sides of its head, there were 2 huge pincers. On the pincers there was a metallic luster. It was as if it could clamp the mountain and clamp the sea. Behind it was a long blood-red tail more than 30 meters long. At the tip of the long tail was a thick spike more than 5 meters long. On the head of the giant scorpion, there was a huge sarcoma with a diameter of 5 meters. If one looked carefully, there were 5 human faces in this huge sarcoma. These 5 human faces were somewhat blurry and distorted. But without exception, they all revealed a sinister smile. The moment this huge monster appeared, at the entrance of the village, the members of the rescue team all changed their expressions. An extremely terrifying psychological pressure pressed down on them, causing them to fall to the ground almost instantly. In fact, the huge pressure originally made them have a strong urge to kneel down and submit. If they didn't kneel down and submit, it was as if they would be annihilated in the next moment. It was only the last bit of pride in the hunting group that prevented them from kneeling. Instead, he fell directly to the ground. Not to mention them, even someone as powerful as Emo had the urge to kneel down at this moment. He really couldn't be blamed for his lack of willpower. It was because they had all been injected with the X2 virus enhancer. And this monster was like the ancestor of the virus. When they saw this monster, the X2 virus in their bodies seemed to be forcing them to submit to the ancestor. Emo was a little angry. This blood pool was really too much. Every single one of them wants me to submit. Another one of them wants me to submit. Do you really think you're the virus ancestor? Anger surged in his heart. He extended his right hand to the right. He seemed to be waiting for someone to hand him a weapon. The next moment, a strange scene occurred. He saw the 4,000 to 5,000 zombies that had just rushed over. Whether it was ordinary zombies, mutated zombies, or strong mutated zombies, their bodies, starting from their heads, were rapidly melting. Even those level 6 strong mutated zombies couldn't escape. Their heads melted into blood and flowed down their bodies. Then, it was their necks, shoulders, chests, waists, legs, their entire bodies melted into blood and flowed on the ground. When the rescue team members saw this scene, they were all shocked. What kind of move was this? At this moment, they saw that the thousands of zombies had all turned into blood. It was definitely a river of blood. The next moment, an even stranger scene happened. The blood didn't seep into the ground. Instead, it quickly floated up. Then it gathered towards the same point. That point was Emo's right hand that was stretched out. All the blood quickly gathered in his hand like iron filings meeting a magnet. Then it slowly condensed into a solid body. At first, it was only a small stick that was less than half a meter long. Gradually, as the blood continued to gather, the entire appearance of that thing was revealed. A long spear that was about 2 meters long. The long spear was completely blood-red. On the body of the spear, there were fine scales that looked like dragon scales. From the shape of the protrusion on the body of the spear, one could clearly see dragon claws and dragon wings. The shape of the tip of the spear was a fist-sized dragon head. The dragon horns, the dragon mouth, and the dozens of barbs on the dragon head were all lifelike. The pair of dragon eyes were fiery red. And if one looked carefully, one could clearly see that there seemed to be flames burning in the pair of dragon eyes. The choice of the entire long spear was exaggerated and domineering. It gave people a feeling that it could swallow the world. At this moment, Emo held the demon-devouring dragon spear in his hand and suddenly felt that his body seemed to have infinite energy. In his eyes, his gaze was like lightning. His entire body seemed to be emitting a supreme domineering, supreme majestic, and irresistible domineering aura. The moment the long spear appeared, the surrounding people actually had the urge to worship it at the same time. They were also suffering. After worshipping that and worshipping this, There was no end to it. At this moment, the 50-meter-long giant scorpion saw that this mere human actually dared to provoke its majesty. Immediately, its anger rose. The 5 heads on the sarcoma on its head actually opened their mouths at the same time. They let out 5 roars of different styles. Roar, roar, hiss, jay, meow. Then, the pair of huge blood-red pincers instantly extended over 100 meters. As if it carried the power to destroy the heavens and the earth, it attacked Mosher. The 49 people of the rescue team were now pressed to the ground by the huge pressure, unable to move. Mosher shook his long spear. He used the dragon shadow step. With a light tap of his feet, he instantly jumped 1,000 meters high. He was in the air, looking down at the giant scorpion. The demon-devouring dragon spear in his hand brazenly stabbed out. The long spear in the air actually extended over 100 meters in an instant. In the next moment, the entire body of the spear actually turned into a 100-meter-long blood-red dragon. The blood-red head was actually the size of a house. There were dozens of sharp barbs on the head. On the dragon's body, each blood-red scale was half a meter in diameter. Each of the 4 thick limbs was more than 10 meters long, like a pillar. The huge tail that was more than 30 meters long was like a giant python. A pair of huge bat-like wings with a wingspan of nearly 100 meters. This blood-red dragon roared towards the sky. The dragon's roar resounded through a radius of tens of kilometers. Within these tens of kilometers, hundreds of beasts were shocked, and thousands of corpses were terrified. The snowflakes in the air seemed to have stopped. The clouds in the sky seemed to have been shaken apart. On the ground, the 40-odd humans lying on the ground barely raised their heads. The moment they saw this giant dragon, they only felt their bodies tremble. Endless fear had already drowned them. In the next moment, the 100-meter-long giant dragon retracted its wings. It swooped down towards the giant scorpion. The speed was as fast as lightning. Its momentum was as fierce as thunder. The spear was like a dragon? No, this was the spear turning into a dragon. Chapter 66. In the sky, the 100-meter-long dragon swooped down brazenly. It went straight for the giant scorpion. The 50-meter-long ferocious giant scorpion was also trembling at this time. It retracted its pincers and hugged the huge sarcomatous head. On the 5 distorted faces of the sarcomatous head, 10 pairs of eyes were filled with horror. Its 8 legs were trembling. In the next moment, the dragon instantly swept over the head of the giant scorpion. It waved its 4 claws. Hiss, the 50-meter-long giant scorpion's body was instantly torn into several pieces. It was thrown far away. At the same time, the dragon soared into the sky again. It soared into the sky. In an instant, it disappeared into the heavy snow. Only blood splattered like a rain of blood. Mixed with the snowflakes, it fluttered down from the sky. The world seemed to have frozen. Time seemed to have stopped. Within dozens of kilometers, all the mutated beasts and zombies were still crawling on the ground. They did not dare to make a sound for a long time. In front of the mountain village, the 49 humans had long been scared out of their wits. They were the closest to the dragon. The dragon almost swept over their heads. That kind of violent and overbearing aura from ancient times. It made them unable to even think of resisting. Dragon, since ancient times, was synonymous with mystery and power. Whether it was the Western dragon or the Eastern dragon, whether it was evil or good, they all had power that was far beyond the reach of humans. They had thought that the Western dragon was just a legend like the Eastern dragon. They had never dreamed that one day they would be able to see a dragon with their own eyes. This caused them to be filled with terror. Even though it was winter with heavy snow, the cold sweat on their foreheads still dripped down. At this moment, when they were still in endless fear, in the flying snow, Mosher floated down. He landed lightly on the snowy ground. He said lightly, "Let's go back." Then, he turned around and walked slowly along the snowy road. Behind him, a trail of lonely footprints was left. It was not until now that everyone came back to their senses. Looking at Emoshur's back, they were all shaken to the core. They knew that the mysterious expert was very strong, but they did not expect him to be so strong. A moment later, everyone's Adam's apple squirmed. Deputy Commander, is that a real dragon? Vice Commander, are there really giant dragons in this world? Deputy Commander Guojutao shook his head blankly. He didn't know, but he knew what to do. He retracted his gaze and scanned everyone sternly. He said, "Let me remind you again. Everything about the mysterious expert is to be buried in your stomachs. When you return to the base, don't go near the corpse farm. Act as if nothing happened. The mysterious expert likes peace and quiet." Everyone's heart trembled. Yes. After that, they did not immediately move. Instead, they waited until Emoshur was 2 kilometers away from them before they started moving forward. This was because they knew that the mysterious expert did not like to be disturbed. At this moment, Emoshur was happy that those people didn't follow him. Actually, he was also deeply shocked in his heart. He knew better than anyone that it was not a real dragon. Instead, it was the demon-devouring dragon spear that was condensed from the flesh and blood of zombies. It was just that this energy dragon was too real, so everyone thought that it was a real dragon. However, even if it was just an energy dragon, Emoshur could feel the strength of this dragon. To be honest, with his current strength, he was far from being able to block that attack. One could only imagine how powerful a real dragon would be if it were to appear. A few days ago, when he used his genetic weapon to kill the giant, this demon-devouring dragon spear was many times stronger. And one must know that the more zombies and mutated beasts that condensed the demon-devouring dragon spear, the stronger the demon-devouring dragon spear. If there were more zombies and mutated beasts, how terrifying would that attack be? What made Emoshur feel the most incredulous was that after such a terrifying attack, he did not feel the slightest bit of weakness. It was as if the power used in that attack did not belong to him at all. The things that he got from signing in at the blood pool were indeed different. This reminded Emoshur of the map again. If he signed in at the Dragon Ruins, the things that he signed would probably be even more powerful than this demon-devouring dragon spear. The next day went very smoothly. It seemed that, because of the dragon's roar, all the zombies and mutated beasts obediently stayed in their nests and did not come out to cause trouble. Emoshur and the others returned to the base smoothly. When they were about to reach the base, Emoshur left the others far behind and quickly flew over the base's city wall. At this time, in the zombie field in Area A, Happy was feeding the zombies for Emoshur. Crippled old Lee was holding a cup of steaming hot water and gently blowing on it a few times. He drank a mouthful. Immediately, he felt his whole body warm up. He looked at the snow flying in the sky and asked, "Little Mo hasn't returned yet?" Happy turned his head, smiled slightly, and shook his head. Old Lee said, "That kid, where did he go crazy? It's been almost half a month." Happy shook his head, indicating that he did not know. Old Lee said, "Why don't I talk to the leader and ask someone to look for him? Don't let anything happen to him." Happy quickly turned around and shook his head. Seeing this, Old Lee knew that Happy must know something. However, since Happy was unwilling to say, he did not ask anymore. Moreover, little Mo had become more and more mysterious recently. He asked them to inject some medicine, and he suddenly disappeared for more than 10 days. However, since Happy seemed to know where Emoshur went, then he was not so worried. As long as nothing happened to him, it was fine. An old man like him did not need to meddle in the affairs of the young people. But then he asked again, "By the way, Happy, have you thought about what I told you?" Happy blushed slightly when she heard that. She lowered her head. After a moment, she raised her head again. She looked at Old Lee with sparkling eyes and shook her head. Old Lee understood what Happy meant. "I know that you think that you can't speak and that you're not worthy of little Mo. You're thinking too much. We're all zombie rearers. Who's looking down on who? Besides, you're so beautiful. You're more than enough for him. If he were to marry you, not only would his ancestral graves be smoking, they would be on fire." A bright smile appeared on Happy's face. But then, the smile slowly turned into a bitter smile. She knew that Brother Mo was not an ordinary zombie rearers. He was a hunter. He might even be a mysterious powerhouse. How could she be worthy of him? Just as she thought of that, a voice came from the door. Old Lee, are you bad-mouthing me again when I'm not around? Happy, stay away from Old Lee in the future. Don't be led astray by him. When Happy heard the voice, she immediately raised her head. The moment she saw Mo, her heart beat faster. Then, the smile on her face became as bright as a flower again, and she quickly went up to him. She kept gesturing with her hands. Mo looked at Happy's slightly red face and watery eyes. He smiled and said, Happy, you don't actually need to gesture. When I see your eyes, I know what you want to say. Your eyes can speak. Happy was a little shy but also a little happy. A pair of eyes that seemed to be able to speak looked at Mo, and his gaze flickered. Mo rubbed Happy's head and said with a smile, Don't worry, I'm fine. I'm very healthy. Happy's hair was messed up, but he nodded happily. When Old Lee saw this, he laughed and said, Little Mo, if you become rich in the future, don't forget to make us happy. Mo also laughed and said, Don't worry, even if I forget about you, I won't forget about Happy. Old Lee was an honest person. He did not know how to joke. He only said, It's fine if you forget about me, as long as you're happy. Chapter 67. 67. Half a year of check-in. Level 10 Psychokinesis. That night, Mo returned to his residence. Lying on his bed, he yawned. He hadn't slept on a bed for more than 10 days. He missed this bed so much. Resting his head on his hands, he sighed. He was finally back. It was so comfortable in the base. If he didn't have anything to do in the future, it would be better to go out less. Checking in at the base, feeding the pigs, and raising the zombies. It was much better than fighting to the death outside. At the same time, the 49 rescue team members also returned to the base. At this time, the deputy commander, Guojutao, was making a report in the base chief's office. He told the base chief that Lu Wang betrayed them and led them into the zombie encirclement. He also said that the mysterious powerhouse saved them and cleared the zombies in front of them. Finally, he said, If it wasn't for the mysterious powerhouse, our entire rescue team would have lost more than just one psychokinesis. Of course, he didn't say who the mysterious powerhouse was. Nor did he say that they had seen the mysterious powerhouse. After hearing this, the base chief lit a cigarette silently. After a moment of silence, he exhaled a puff of smoke and said, In the apocalypse, people's hearts are scarier than zombies. Guojutao felt the same way. After a while, the base chief said, We have to be more vigilant in the future. We have to be more careful about those exiles. Yes, chief, the chief said again. Announce this matter and let the whole base know. At the same time, let everyone know the contribution of the mysterious powerhouse. The mysterious powerhouse doesn't need our gratitude, but we can't not be grateful. Guojutao nodded. Yes, chief. Therefore, in the next few days, everywhere he went, he heard discussions about the mysterious powerhouse. In the cafeteria by the warehouse on the guard tower, Emo's ears were getting calluses from hearing so much. When he returned to the zombie farm, Old Lee was still nagging in his ears. This mysterious powerhouse is really a savior. I thought that I would never see the hope of the world returning to normal. But the mysterious powerhouse gave me a glimmer of hope. Mo shook his head helplessly. Old Lee, can you say something else? It's been 3 days now. Every day there's been a mysterious expert. Aren't you annoying? Old Lee rolled his eyes at Mo. You brat, you don't know what's good for you. You're just saying that in a corpse-raising field. If I had told them earlier, Old Lee was an honest man. He couldn't think of any words. At this moment, the leader walked in. He added, If I had told them earlier, I'm afraid you would have passed the 7th day. Mo was too lazy to argue with them. Happy, on the other hand, had a brilliant smile on his face. She loved watching the two of them bicker. Moreover, she now knew that Brother Mo could very well be that mysterious expert. Under such circumstances, watching the leader bicker with Brother Mo gave her a strange feeling. The following days were peaceful again. Other than working, Mo Shi was signing in every day. He was living a carefree life. Occasionally, they would bump into the rescue team members on the road, and they would all nod at Mo Shi. His eyes were filled with sincere reverence. Mo Shi just nodded lightly. For 3 months, Mo Shi designated the rewards for signing in every day. At the same time, he doubled the rewards. 11,000 evolution points every day. In 3 months, he only spent a little more than 1 million. And the brain cell enhancer that he received every day had raised his telekinesis to the peak of level 8. On this day, after Mo Shi injected 10 brain cell enhancers, he could clearly feel that his telekinesis was about to break through. This made him look forward to it. After midnight that night, he signed another 10 brain cell enhancers. After injecting 2, he felt a warm current in his body rushing straight to his head. His eyes were clear, and his spirit was greatly boosted. 5 minutes later, he felt his telekinesis instantly extend outwards. It had reached a radius of 900 meters. Within 900 meters, everything could be clearly seen as long as he scanned with his telekinesis. Phew! He exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. A smile appeared on his face. He had finally reached level 9. Level 9 telekinesis could detect a radius of 900 meters. He could control anything below 90 kilograms. In other words, he could lift the vast majority of people with his telekinesis alone. Psychokinesis telekinesis was very difficult to increase. Other psychokinesis could only increase by 1 level after a few years or even more than 10 years. And Mo Shi had injected more than 900 strengthened brain cell enhancers in these 3 months. He had directly increased by 1 level. He had jumped to level 9 psychokinesis. With his current telekinesis, he could easily kill any hunter below level 8, including level 8 hunters. In other words, all the mutated beasts and strong mutated zombies below level 8 that he knew of, he could instantly kill them with just a thought. However, Mo Shi's heart was only slightly excited for a moment. Then he regained his calmness. Now that his telekinesis had reached a very terrifying level, but the strength of his body was a little weak compared to his telekinesis. It didn't match. Since young, the teachers taught us that we had to grasp both language and mathematics, and both hands had to be strong. If the telekinesis increased and the strength of the body couldn't keep up, he would have to spend more energy on defense during battle. Think about it if the body was strong enough. When the enemy's attack hit his body, Mo Shi wouldn't have the slightest reaction. Then, he would use his tyrannical telekinesis to sweep across. What kind of scene would that be? Therefore, in the next half a year, Mo Shi didn't increase his telekinesis anymore. Instead, he used all the sign-in opportunities to sign Titan Dragon Gene Enhancers. Mo Shi signed 10 strengthened Titan Dragon Gene Enhancers every day. The improvement of a hunter was relatively easier than the improvement of psychokinesis. In just half a month, he broke through to level 6 hunter. Then, he broke through one after another. In 2 months, Mo Shi's level had reached level 8 hunter. After another month of sign-in, he had reached the peak of level 8 hunter. On this day, after another injection, Mo Shi's heart skipped a beat. After another injection, he should be able to break through. That night, just after midnight, the sign-in opportunity refreshed. He directly said in his mind, "System, the sign-in reward is doubled. Specify the strengthened Titan Dragon Gene Enhancer." The system instantly replied, "Frowny face, this sign-in will cost 11,000 evolution points. Please confirm if you want to sign in." Mo Shi, confirm. Sign-in successful. Sign-in reward. Titan Dragon Gene Enhancer X10. Mo Shi moved his mind and took out all 10 gene enhancers. He injected 7 of them in a row. When he injected the 8th one, his body temperature began to rise rapidly. Mo Shi knew that he was about to break through. He immediately put down the 8th gene enhancer in his hand. His telekinesis enveloped his entire body and probed into it. He carefully observed every cell, every drop of blood, every piece of muscle, and every change in bone. Chapter 68. Mo concentrated his telekinesis in his body. Every drop of blood, every piece of muscle, and every piece of bone in his body was rapidly growing stronger. His blood flowed faster, his muscles became fuller, and his bones became stronger. He could even feel that there was energy flowing within his muscles. His body temperature began to rise rapidly. In just 5 minutes, it reached a level that he could barely bear. But after a while, his body temperature quickly returned to normal. Mo looked at the back of his right hand. There was another slight bulge. He knew that this was the Sky Splitter Dragon Spear. Every time he leveled up, the Sky Splitter Dragon Spear mark on his arm would increase by 1. Now, there were already 9 marks. Phew! Mo exhaled. He looked at his attributes in his mind. Name: Mo Level: Level 9 Hunter. Level 9 Psychokinesis. Evolution Path: Titan Dragon. He had finally reached both level 9. Now, Mo's physical strength and telekinesis had greatly increased. Now, even if he didn't use telekinesis, genetic martial arts, or the demon-devouring dragon spear, he could still fight against a level 10 hunter. If he used telekinesis, he could easily defeat level 10 hunters, level 10 strong mutant beasts, and level 10 strong mutant zombies. Of course, the prerequisite was that there couldn't be too many opponents. If there were 100 or even 1,000 level 10 strong mutant beasts, he would have to retreat temporarily. So, Mo planned to use the next 6 months to reach level 10 psychokinesis and level 10 hunter. So, in the following days, Mo continued to raise pigs and zombies every day. It was peaceful and comfortable. As for the hunter group, they would still clear the zombies outside the base regularly. Occasionally, they would go further and explore the base's surroundings. This was to prevent a large-scale zombie siege like last time. Although they knew that there was a mysterious elite in the base, they still had to be careful. They couldn't rely on the mysterious elite for everything. One day, when the hunter group sent people to explore the periphery again, they met a group of elites in the wilderness. According to these elites, they were from base C10. There were 55 of them, 50 hunters and 5 psychokinesis. Every one of them was at least a level 5 hunter. The strongest among them was a level 8 hunter. Most of the psychics were at least level 4. The strongest one had a telekinesis of level 6. Everyone in the hunting group was very surprised. After all, the strongest hunter in their hunting party was only a level 3 hunter led by their leader. The only 2 patients with psychokinesis were only level 3 psychokinesis. Surprised, the hunting group decided to bring them back to the base. However, after the previous lesson, they still asked one more question before bringing these people back to the base. You don't want us to go with you to save people, do you? The people of base C10 laughed heartily. They all shook their heads. The level 6 psychokinesis in the lead was their captain. Her name was Lu Nian. He smiled brightly and said, "When our base was hunting zombies, we accidentally found a way to make hunters and psychokinesis stronger quickly. That's why the hunters and psychics in our base are much stronger than the other bases. This gave us hope to restore human civilization. However, the number of hunters and psychokinesis in base C10 is too small. No matter how strong we are, we can't restore human civilization to what it used to be. So the leader of the base sent us to contact other bases and teach them how to become stronger quickly." At this point, the captain paused and said, "We went to base C9 before. We didn't expect that the zombies had already taken over base C9 and it was reduced to ruins." At this point, his eyes dimmed a little. A team member next to him said, "There are not many survivors left. Now, there aren't many humans left alive. Without the lips, the teeth will feel cold. Every time a base is taken, humans will be closer to extinction." Everyone was a little depressed when they heard this. The captain, Lu Nian, spoke again. "So we rushed to base C1 as fast as we could. The zombies are getting stronger and stronger. We have to tell all the bases how to become stronger as soon as possible. Humans are now a community with a shared future. Only when all the bases become stronger can we defeat the zombies. Thus, we can stop the real apocalypse." The body hunters were all shocked when they heard this. During their recent exploration, they had indeed found that there were more and more strong mutated zombies. If humans didn't become stronger quickly, it wouldn't be long before the 58 bases left in the world were taken over one by one. When that time came, they would usher in the real extinction. Therefore, the exploration team brought these strong people back to the base. Their arrival made the entire base begin to rejoice, especially after knowing that they had a way to make psychokinesis and hunters quickly become stronger. The leader of the base naturally received them personally. The level 6 psychokinesis captain didn't waste much time after seeing the leader of the base. After introducing himself, he took out a small bottle and a notebook. Inside the bottle was a bright red liquid. He opened his mouth and said, "We accidentally came across a very strange zombie. It should be a zombie that was infected after the virus mutated. We took a blood sample from his blood. Through research, our base laboratory found that this blood has a strong effect on psychokinesis and hunters." Then he pointed at the notebook and said, "Our base's scientists have already memorized the program of the enhancement agent. They said that as long as the researchers from other bases see the blood sample and their notes, they will soon be able to develop the enhancement agent." The leader of the base was delighted when he heard this. He immediately sent the blood sample and the notebook to the base laboratory. After the laboratory scientists identified it, they found that this blood did indeed have the effect of improving psychokinesis and hunter strength. They then conducted an in-depth study of the program in the notebook. Then all the researchers became excited. With this program, they would be able to produce the first bottle of enhancement agent in just a month. When this news came out, the entire base was in an uproar again, especially those psychokinesis and hunters. In the past few years, they had clearly felt that it was getting harder and harder to improve. Now that they knew that they could quickly improve their strength, how could they not be excited? At that moment, the laboratory began to research the first bottle of enhancement agent. As for the 55 people from base C10, they were arranged by the leader to stay in the hunting group. This stay lasted for 3 days. During these 3 days, these people were very enthusiastic. From time to time, they would guide the members of the hunting group in their training. After all, they were strong people. Many things like enlightenment were very useful to the members of the hunting group. However, no one expected that a sudden change would happen that night. Chapter 69. The visitors from base C10 didn't affect Mosher at all. He still lived a leisurely life every day. Every night after midnight, he would spend 11,000 evolution points to sign out 10 enhanced brain cell enhancers. He was aiming for level 10 psychokinesis. Of course, he looked relaxed, but he was still a little worried. What kind of existence was the king that the 2 strong variant zombies spoke of? The clawed zombie from before, after transforming into 3 heads and 6 arms, had already reached level 10. Then, the existence that it called king must have already surpassed level 10 strong variant zombies. Thinking like this, Mosher felt that it was urgent for him to increase his strength. However, his increase in strength wasn't like the other psychokinesis and hunters who continuously trained to increase their strength. He only needed to sign in every day and inject the enhancers. So on the surface, he gave people the impression that he was very relaxed. He naturally knew about the 50 people that came from the base, but he wasn't too interested in them. With his current strength, he could easily deal with the strongest level 6 psychic and level 8 hunter in the group. That night, after signing in for another injection, Mosher yawned and fell asleep. At the same time in the hunting group, on the first floor of Building 1, the level 6 psychokinesis from base C10 called Lu Nian. His telekinesis moved slightly. It spread to the room of the level 8 hunter in their team. The level 8 hunter felt a slight pain in his head. He immediately turned over and got off the bed. He observed from the window for a moment, then carefully went out. He came to Lu Nian's room. The room was dark. After the level 8 hunter entered the room, he quietly opened the curtains and carefully observed the movements outside. The level 6 psychokinesis Lu Nian smiled and said in a low voice, "Don't worry, my telekinesis can detect a radius of 600 meters. Within this range, no one will notice your arrival." The level 8 hunter carefully put down the curtains and said, "Captain, I'm worried about being detected by their psychokinesis." Lu Nian chuckled and said in disdain, "Both of their psychics are only level 3, and they're only at level 3. It's impossible for them to detect anything within the range of my telekinesis. Furthermore, they know that I'm a level 6 psychokinesis. Naturally, they wouldn't dare to casually investigate our place." The level 8 hunter nodded, then continued, "Even so, we still have to be careful." Lu Nian chuckled and shook his head. "You're good at everything, but you're too cautious. Haven't we already figured it out over the past 3 days? The strongest commander in their base is only a level 2 hunter. So what if their entire hunting squad comes?" The level 8 hunter nodded and said, "Yes, Captain, you're right. I was being too careful. Then, should we do it tonight?" Lu Nian smiled. "Of course." The level 8 hunter hesitated for a moment. "But today I heard someone in his base say that there is a mysterious expert. One move was enough to destroy 40 buildings in a residential area. Furthermore, he had exploded the heads of over 1,000 zombies with one move. He even used his telekinesis to form a blood-red tornado and annihilated millions of zombies." Lu Nian chuckled. "Do you believe that?" The level 8 hunter shook his head. "They're just bragging. Who is both a hunter and a psychokinesis? Moreover, even the current me is far from being able to destroy an entire residential area with a single move. As for killing millions of zombies, even someone as strong as you can't do that." Captain Lu Nian shrugged. "So what are you worried about?" The level 8 hunter thought for a moment and said, "Captain, before we left, the leader of the base told us to be careful. Why don't we wait for a few more days and figure out the situation of base C1? Captain Lu Nian was getting impatient. He waved his hand. "We can wait, but can the leader afford to wait? Can the 120,000 people of base C10 afford to wait?" The level 8 hunter's expression changed slightly. Captain Lu Nian said, "Don't say anything else. There's no need to say any more. Go over now and kill their leader. Leave those 2 psychokinesis to me. Arrange your men. Once we make a move, the rest of the team will move together and kill the 100 or so hunters as quickly as possible." Seeing that the captain had made up his mind, the level 8 hunter didn't have any other thoughts. He said with a firm gaze, "Yes, Captain." 3:15 p.m. The bright moon hung high in the sky. Most of the members of the hunter group had already entered a deep sleep. In the entire hunter group, only the 5 hunters who were on night duty were chatting on the sentry tower at the entrance. At this moment, bang, there was a muffled sound. The head of a night watchman suddenly exploded. Blood splattered on the faces of the other 4 people. The 4 of them were shocked and hurriedly wanted to sound the alarm. Bang, 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 bang. 4 muffled sounds rang out at the same time. The heads of the 4 people also exploded into a cloud of blood mist. The psychokinesis near the sentry tower was originally in a deep sleep. But at this moment, he suddenly opened his eyes. However, in the next moment, bang, his head also exploded into a cloud of blood mist. Then, the head of the other psychokinesis also exploded. In the room, Lu Nian had killed these people in just a few breaths, including the 2 level 2 psychokinesis, but he acted as if he had done nothing. To him, a level 6 psychokinesis, the 2 level 2 psychokinesis were just ants. At the same time, at the door of Captain Yang Kang's bedroom, Yang Kang had already fallen asleep. As the captain, besides training hard every day, he had a lot of work to do. Every night, he went to bed at 1 o'clock and woke up at 6 o'clock. He only slept for 5 hours. So in these 5 hours, he slept like a log. At this moment, the level 8 hunter gently twisted his right hand. Click! The door lock was twisted out of shape. He quietly pushed the door open and entered the room. His right hand clenched into a fist and stretched out toward Yang Kang. A bone spike the size of a chopstick slowly stretched out between the index and middle fingers of his right hand. At a certain moment, whoosh, this sharp bone spike instantly flew out. Chi with a soft sound. It nailed into Yang Kang's heart. Yang Kang, who was sleeping soundly, suddenly opened his eyes. However, in the next moment, another bone spike instantly entered his forehead and came out from the back of his head. The last trace of Yang Kang's gaze was filled with shock. With Captain Yang Kang dead, the level 8 hunter was instantly relieved. He strode out of Yang Kang's room. At the same time, the other hunters saw him walk out. They immediately rushed into the rooms of the other hunters at base C1 and began to attack. The more than 100 hunters at base C1 were basically only level 1 and level 2 hunters. How could they be a match for hunters above level 5? In just a few seconds, all 50 hunters in the hunting squad were slaughtered to the last man. Thank you to Lonely Me for the 588 yuan tip. Thank you, brother. Chapter 70. No one in base C1 had expected that the hunters in the hunting squad would be slaughtered in less than half a minute. All of this happened so suddenly that no one could react in time. As for many hunters, they had already died while they were still asleep. At this moment, only the hunters were left in the hunting squad. They heard the commotion and rushed out of the courtyard to check. However, the first batch of people who rushed to the courtyard were all killed in a few seconds. Their heads exploded one after another with a series of bangs. 10 seconds later, 100 people had fallen to the ground and become headless corpses. The remaining people were all shocked and didn't dare to walk out of the courtyard. At the same time, Lu Nian chuckled. He slowly came to the courtyard. He glanced at the hundreds of headless corpses on the ground and the blood all over the ground. He raised his head and looked at the bright moonlight. He sighed in his heart. What a beautiful moon. Then, he slowly opened his mouth and said in a clear voice, "Those who surrender will not be killed. Now, those who surrender, raise your hands and come out obediently." After a while, there was no response. All the hunters in the hunting squad didn't understand why such a sudden change had happened and were a little confused. Secondly, they were furious that these guys were so cruel and had killed so many of their hunters. Naturally, no one responded. Lu Nian smiled slightly and said, "No one responded? Very well. Then let's start with the first room." Then, he nodded at the level 8 hunter. The level 8 hunter waved at the other hunters. Those hunters immediately rushed into room 101 of the male dormitory building like wolves and tigers. No. You. Suddenly, there was a scream from room 101. However, this scream only lasted for less than 10 seconds. Then, there was silence. The smell of blood drifted out from the window of room 101. Lu Nian smiled slightly and said, "I'll say it one last time. Those who surrender, raise your hands and come out slowly." After a while, there was still no response. Lu Nian nodded at the level 8 hunter again. Soon, a few screams came from room 102. Then, just like room 101, it was silent. In room 103, everyone looked at each other and finally gritted their teeth and slowly walked out of the room. Then, the hunters in rooms 104, 105, and 106 walked out one after another. Soon, there were more than 500 hunters standing in the courtyard. There were more than 1,000 hunters living in the hunting squad, and the rest were scattered around the base. In the female dormitory, the female hunters also came out one after another. They knew that if they didn't come out when facing such a strong enemy, they would definitely die. But now, as long as they conserved their strength. Then, when the mysterious expert appeared, these fellows would eventually be punished. However, they were all thinking in their hearts, with such a huge commotion here, why hadn't the mysterious expert appeared yet? Only a few people who had been to base C9 knew that the mysterious man lived in the corpse farm in Area A. As for the hunting group's headquarters, it was more than 10 kilometers away from the corpse farm in Area A. Not to mention that the news hadn't spread yet. Even if he did, it would take some time for the mysterious expert to arrive. So they quietly comforted the people around them. "Let's get out first and save our lives. The mysterious expert will naturally appear." Everyone's spirits rose when they heard this. He whispered, "Yeah, the mysterious expert will take care of him. The mysterious expert will be here soon. If we make meaningless resistance now, it will be equivalent to dying in vain." However, among all the hunters, there was only one exception. This person was a female hunter, but she had short hair. Her short hair pointed to the sky. It was like the spikes of a hedgehog. She was the short-haired girl who had gone to the dam to protect the corpse farmers and researchers. At this moment, her 5 roommates were planning to walk out like the others. But when they turned their heads, they found that the short-haired girl had no intention of going out. One of her roommates whispered, "Hot girl, let's go." As she spoke, she pulled the girl's hand. The short-haired girl puffed out her chest and looked through the window at Lu Nian in the courtyard. She said coldly, "The word surrender doesn't exist in my dictionary." Her roommate tugged at her arm. "Hot girl, do you want to die?" The short-haired girl shook off her roommate's arm, anger rising in her eyes, and said angrily, "I'd rather die standing than live kneeling." The roommate persuaded, "Let's hold on a little longer. Maybe God." However, the hot chick pushed her roommate out. Then, with a bang, she slammed the door. "Surrender? Humph, even if it's just for a second, it's still my humiliation." Her roommates were all stunned. Hot girl usually had a bad temper, so she was called Hot Girl. Moreover, she was careless, like a rough man. Therefore, no one liked to talk to her. But at this time, the most unyielding person in the entire dormitory was actually her. However, wasn't it too stupid to give up her life for just a moment of surrender? Lu Nian's psychic power detected this scene and smiled slightly. "Mysterious expert? Interesting. Bring her out for me." At this time, he already believed that there was a mysterious expert in base C1. But in his opinion, there was no need to worry. He didn't believe that there was someone stronger than him in psychic power. He also didn't believe that there was someone who could be both a hunter and psychokinesis. Therefore, he believed that the so-called mysterious expert was at most a slightly stronger psychokinesis. He used some tricks and played some tricks to be regarded as a savior. In today's world, saviors are really cheap. A mocking smile appeared on his lips. At this moment, a hunter kicked open the door and pulled the hot girl out by her hair. Hot girl wanted to resist, but she was only a level 5 hunter. How could she resist? Her eyes were burning with anger as she roared, "Let go of me!" As she spoke, she grabbed the hunter's wrist with both hands and shook her head violently. Rip, her short hair, along with a large piece of her scalp, was torn off by her own hands. Her head was immediately dripping with blood, and a few streaks of blood crawled down her face. Everyone was aghast when they saw this. Even some of the hunters from base C10 were slightly moved. Seeing this, Lu Nian clapped his hands with a hint of mockery. "Good. What a fierce girl. Tomorrow at the guillotine I'll start with you." Then he waved his hand. The hunter immediately used a chain to tie the hot girl up tightly and brought her away. Then Lu Nian said to the level 8 hunter, "Bring 3 psychokinesis and capture the chief of the base." Yes. The level 8 hunter immediately brought a dozen hunters and 3 psychokinesis and left. After more than 40 minutes, they had already brought the chief of the base back. Lu Nian looked at the chief of the base whose hands were tied up and smiled slightly. "Chief, are you surprised? Are you surprised?" There was no shock or fear in the chief's eyes. There was only a hint of regret. In fact, after the incident with Lu Wang, he had been very careful. This was especially true for outsiders. That was why he arranged these people from base C10 to be in the Hunter Groups department. His idea was that the Hunter Groups department was the safest place in the entire base C1. If these people made any moves, the more than 1,000 people in the Hunter Groups department would be able to take them down immediately. However, he had underestimated the strength of a level 6 psychokinesis. Chapter 71. Under the moonlight, the base chief's face was bruised and swollen. But he wasn't afraid of Lu Nian. Only annoyance. He had underestimated level 6 psychokinesis, and he thought that even if these people were up to no good, they wouldn't do it directly in the hunting group's headquarters. But he didn't expect that these people would be so unscrupulous. The amiable smile that seemed to have always been on his face had long since disappeared. He said, I just want to know why? Lu Nian smiled and said, Chief, you're a smart man. You should know what's most important in this apocalypse. The base chief pondered for a moment, then said, You're here to fight for resources? Lu Nian smiled. Chief, you're a smart man. Simply put, in the past year, level 9 and even level 10 mutant beasts and zombies have often appeared within 100 kilometers of our base. For survival reasons, our base chief ordered us to contact other bases and try to transfer all the humans there. The base chief said, The other bases refused. Lu Nian nodded, a hint of viciousness flashing in his eyes. Not only did they refuse, but they even ambushed us with a base. More than 30 hunters from our base and more than 500 civilians who were escorting them were all slaughtered. The base chief frowned. So you're not here to negotiate, but to rob us? Lu Nian nodded. I'll need your cooperation, base chief. Gather some representatives tomorrow. Tell them about the current situation. It's best if they accept us obediently. The base chief frowned slightly, but he didn't hesitate at all. Okay. He couldn't hesitate. If he hesitated for a second, more people would die. And he also knew that, with the mysterious powerhouse around, these people would eventually be wiped out. Lu Nian seemed to have guessed the base chief's thoughts. He smiled and said, I heard that there's a mysterious powerhouse in your base? The base chief's heart skipped a beat. There was no answer. Lu Nian smiled. If there really is, I'd like to see it tomorrow. I hope he won't be too scared. The next morning, 8 o'clock. It was summer. Although it was only 8 o'clock, the sun was already quite lethal. On the walls of the corpse-raising field, the Boston ivy seemed to have its head drooped, as if it had lost its vigor. Wuxia had already fed the pigs and zombies. He was sitting under the grape trellis in the courtyard, chatting with Oldly. The grapes were planted by Happy, and the trellis was also built by Happy. A gust of wind blew over. It was rather cool. Wuxia closed his eyes comfortably. Oldly also yawned comfortably and said, It's all thanks to Happy for this great pergola, or else, I don't know how I would have been able to get through this summer. Wuxia nodded. Yes. Oldly said, intentionally or otherwise. Happy is really a good girl. Whoever marries her in the future will be blessed by their ancestors. Wuxia nodded again without even opening his eyes. Yes. Oldly saw that this guy didn't seem to have any intention of saying more. He thought to himself that he had to think of a way to provoke him. He could clearly see that both of them seemed to be interested in each other. But that layer of window paper just couldn't be broken. If he didn't resolve this matter, he would die of old age. At this moment, Wuxia heard a few urgent roars coming from the laboratory next door. Everyone in the laboratory, go to the hunting groups department. The base's chief personally gave the order. Then, a voice came from the gym. Everyone, put down the things in your hands and go to the hunting groups department. Something happened. A moment later, a few hunters entered the corpse farm. The person in the lead was Lil Bean. It had been almost 10 years since Lil Bean left the corpse farm. She had never returned. But at this moment, she suddenly ran in. Old Lee was an honest person. He didn't blame Lil Bean. At this moment, when he saw Lil Bean walking quickly, he quickly went up to her and asked, Lil Bean, did something happen? Lil Bean nodded at Old Lee and said, Uncle Lee. Old Lee was also surprised. Ever since Lil Bean left the corpse farm, he had met her a few times on the way. He took the initiative to greet her, but she ignored him. Later on, when they met on the way, he basically didn't dare to greet her. Why did Lil Bean come to the corpse farm today and even call him Uncle Lee? It had to be known that Lil Bean had never called him Uncle Lee when she was in the corpse farm. Lil Bean looked around the yard and didn't see Wuxia under the grape trellis. She asked, Uncle Lee, is everyone in the corpse farm here? Old Lee nodded. Everyone is here. What happened? Lil Bean immediately raised her voice and said, Something big happened. Last night, the hunting groups department was attacked. Almost all the hunters are dead. What? What's going on? Old Lee said in horror. The two hunters behind Lil Bean were impatient to talk to the corpse farmer. They said, Why are you talking so much nonsense? You'll know when you get there. Lil Bean turned around and glared at the two hunters. Then she said to Old Lee, Uncle Lee, it's those people from Base C-10. They have already captured the chief of the base and are forcing him to hand over the base. It's a long story. Anyway, I'll inform you first. You must tell everyone in the corpse farm to go. Old Lee was puzzled. But even if we from the corpses go, we won't be able to help. Lil Bean said, it's precisely because you can't help that they want you to go. They want to establish their authority. If you can help, they probably won't dare to ask you to go. Then she reminded again solemnly, no matter what, please tell everyone in the corpse farm to go. After saying that, she glanced at Mosher's room. Then she hurriedly left with the two hunters. After leaving the corpse farm, the two hunters were puzzled. Deputy Captain, they're just corpse farmers. There's no need to inform them. Lil Bean glared at the two of them. I used to be a corpse farmer too. The two of them saw that Lil Bean's mood didn't seem right. They looked at each other and didn't dare to say anything. In the corpse farm, Old Lee came to the grape trellis and said with a solemn expression, how did this happen? Did you hear what Lil Bean said? Mosher furrowed his brows slightly. If those people from Base C-10 killed others, he couldn't be bothered to care. As long as they didn't disturb his life. But without the protection of hunters, the base wasn't as safe as before. His leisurely check-in life would definitely be affected. Then he had no choice but to kill them. Thinking of this, he said to Old Lee, since the hunters said that everyone in the corpse farm will go, wouldn't it be bad if we don't go? Old Lee nodded. That's what I mean. Then let's go check the corpse farm now and go immediately. Then, the three people in the corpse farm carefully checked the corpse farm. After making sure that the zombies chain was fine, they locked the door of the corpse farm. Then they quickly walked out of the corpse farm. Following the people in the laboratory and the gym, they went to the hunter group's headquarters. Along the way, other people came out of their homes, schools, repair shops, and warehouses. Lil Bean led the way in front, looking back from time to look for Mosher. But there were too many people, so he didn't see him for a while. In fact, those people from Base C-10 originally asked him to find some important people in important institutions. But he knew that he had to inform the mysterious strongman Mosher. Considering that Mosher didn't want to expose his identity, he notified all the residents of the institutions around the corpse farm. As for how Mosher would continue to hide his identity in the hall, that was not something he could consider. In short, he had done everything he could. The rest was up to Mosher. Chapter 72. The sun in July was scorching. However, no matter how scorching the sun was, it was still inferior to the human heart. Under the sun, Lil Bean led tens of thousands of people forward slowly. Tens of thousands of people didn't look mighty. Instead, they gave people a sense of oppression. Someone in the crowd whispered, "What happened? What's going on? Why did you suddenly call everyone here?" Someone who knew a little bit about the situation said, "I heard that something big happened in the hunter group. All the hunters are dead. It was done by the people from Base C-10. The others heard it and couldn't believe it. That's impossible. Keep bragging." In the eyes of ordinary people, hunters were superhuman beings. In their eyes, hunters were so powerful that they were close to gods. He could easily destroy a building with a casual blow. But now all the hunters were dead. They couldn't believe it. At the same time, what was even more unbelievable was that the killers were from Base C-10. Weren't they here to deliver some blood? Didn't they say that they wanted to develop together? Someone thought of something and asked in a low voice, "Where's the mysterious master? Why didn't he do anything?" The others also whispered in agreement. "Yeah, this is related to the whole base. Why didn't the mysterious master do anything?" Someone immediately retorted, "This happened in the middle of the night, brother. Doesn't the mysterious master need to sleep? Besides, the mysterious master isn't the nanny of the hunter group. He can't keep an eye on the hunter group all the time." Everyone nodded. The person who spoke first felt everyone's gaze and didn't dare to say anything else. Hearing these people's words, Happy turned to look at Mosher. But Mo didn't seem to hear it. She muttered in her heart, "Is Brother Mo the mysterious master?" More than 40 minutes later, they went out of the first line of defense and came to the hunter group's headquarters between the first and second lines of defense. There was a large open space at the entrance of the headquarters. There were all kinds of fitness equipment around the open space. In the middle of the open space was a huge playground that was several times bigger than an ordinary one. Normally, the hunters would train and spar on the field. But today, more than 1,000 hunters in the headquarters were escorted to the center of the playground. More than 200 corpses were placed next to them. More than 100 headless corpses belonged to the hunters. The rest were all hunters, including Regiment Commander Yang Kong. On the rostrum on the north side of the field, Lu Nian was smiling as he looked at the more than 1,000 hunters below. Beside him was the chief of the base. It seemed that the chief of the base was sitting on the chair as usual. However, there were 2 liver swellings on his face. Behind him there were 2 hunters, one on his left and one on his right, watching over him. A moment later, Xiao Dou brought the 10,000 people to the field. When everyone saw the scene before them, although they were shocked, they did not dare to say anything. He was led by Little Bean to a place not far from the rostrum. On the rostrum, Lu Nian had a bright smile on his face when he saw the 10,000 people arrive. He opened his mouth and said, "I'm really sorry to disturb everyone." As a level 6 psychokinesis, as long as he was within the range of his telekinesis, everyone would be able to hear every word he said. He continued, "We only have one goal this time, to take over your base C1. Although his words were very calm, his tone was full of dominance. Then, he pointed at the more than 1,000 hunters and the more than 100 hunters' corpses. He said, "It's very simple. Those who are obedient stand up. Those who are disobedient lie down." The more than 10,000 people were all shocked. The strongest people in base C1, the more than 100 hunters, were really dead. As for the over 1,000 corpse hunters, it was clear that they had surrendered. The remaining hunters, although in other parts of the base, had not come over yet. But the more than 2,000 people were just hunters. In front of the hunters and the powerful psychokinesis of base C10, what could they do? Moreover, even the chief of the base was in their hands. Lu Nian smiled brightly under the sun. He made an inviting gesture to the chief of the base next to him. He said, "Now, let's invite the most respected chief to say a few words to everyone. All of you had better listen carefully. The chief's words are all true and meaningful. This is very educational." The chief of the base's face was gloomy. He slowly stood up. He straightened his chest. He raised his head. He stood proudly. After a while, he said, "You can kill or torture them as you wish, but these people are innocent." Lu Nian smiled and shook his head. "Chief, don't worry. I'm not an executioner. These people will listen to you. You just have to move your mouth and make them behave. You will be good, I will be good, and everyone will be good." As he spoke, he made an inviting gesture again. Hearing this, the chief of the base frowned. He slowly came in front of the microphone. Then, he slowly said, "Brothers and sisters, I, Ma Yongshi, am incompetent and have caused your lives to be threatened. I'm sorry." Lu Nian smiled and said, "Chief, since I was young, my father has taught me not to say any unnecessary nonsense. If I say anything, do you know what to do?" As he spoke, he gently rubbed his cheeks. "Use the sole of your shoe to slap your face." Before he finished speaking, the level 8 hunter next to him actually took off his shoe. He held the shoe in his hand and looked at the chief. When everyone saw the scene, anger rose in their hearts. This was completely insulting the chief of the base in public. "Chief, you've gone too far. Let the chief go." Lu Nian shrugged and said to the chief of the base, "Ma Yongshi. Chief, the children are not very obedient. Tell them, remember, don't talk nonsense. Otherwise, the children won't like to hear it, and I won't like to hear it either." The chief of the base, Ma Yongshi, looked at the more than 10,000 people below. After a moment of silence, at a certain moment, The dim light in his eyes slowly disappeared. His brows also slowly relaxed. He said, "This is the darkest moment since the establishment of our base. However, please believe that this is only the darkness before dawn. Soon the sun will shine on the earth. And the mysterious powerhouse will be the one who will tear open the curtain of darkness." After a few simple words, he turned his head. He looked straight at Lu Nian. Head high, chest out, body straight like a spear. He was already prepared to be killed by Lu Nian. Everyone's heart was shaken. The mysterious powerhouse. Someone suddenly yelled. The mysterious powerhouse will definitely appear. He will definitely come. Seeing this, a ball of anger rose in Lu Nian's heart. These people were clearly like ants in front of him. At this moment, they had no intention of yielding. He wanted to kill these people to establish his authority. But he thought silently. The reason why these people dared to be so presumptuous. Obviously, it was the mysterious powerhouse that gave them hope. Only by killing the mysterious powerhouse in front of these people could they completely lose hope. Since that was the case, he wanted to see how strong this mysterious powerhouse was. However, the angrier he was, the brighter the smile on his face. His smile was as bright as spring flowers blooming. Clap, clap, clap. He clapped his hands and said, as expected of the chief of the base, "Well said. I've learned a lot. Actually, I haven't finished what I said just now. For those who are disobedient, my father will use the sole of his shoe to beat them, but I have my own way of doing it. Chief, I'll get someone to give you a demonstration. You have to look carefully." Turning his head, he said to the more than 10,000 people, "All of you watch carefully too." Then he waved his hand and said, "Bring that fierce woman up." Chapter 73. Bring that fierce girl up here, Lu Nian said with a smile. Soon, the short-haired hot girl was brought up. She was carried by a hunter and thrown onto the rostrum. At the same time, another hunter carried a 2-meter-tall wooden stone cross and erected it on the rostrum. Lu Nian smiled brightly and glanced at everyone. Finally, his eyes fell on the chief and said, "This is how I deal with disobedient people." Then, he nodded to the hunter next to him. The hunter immediately lifted the hot girl up and stretched out her arms to both sides, pressing her tightly against the wooden cross. Lu Nian's smile gradually became cruel. He used his telekinesis and a flying knife was suspended in the air. Then it quickly flew toward the hot girl. Bang! There was a muffled sound. The flying knife instantly pierced through the hot girl's right hand. It directly nailed her hand to the wooden cross. On the rostrum, more than 10,000 people were shocked. At the same time, anger rose. The hot girl's face instantly turned pale. However, not only did she not beg for mercy, she did not even scream. She gritted her teeth. He kept making gurgling noises from his mouth. Seeing this, the chief of the base, Ma Yongshi, growled. "Lu Nian, you're too cruel." Lu Nian's smile was as bright as a flower. He looked back at Ma Yongshi and agreed. "You're right. Since she doesn't want to surrender, I can only be cruel." Then, for more flying knives flew out from his body. They slowly flew toward the hot girl. The hot girl's eyes were wide open. There was no fear on her face. Instead, she was full of anger. She cursed. "You pervert, kill me if you dare. If you don't kill me, you're not a man." Lu Nian heard this and the corner of his mouth twitched. Any man who heard such words would probably explode on the spot. But the smile on Lu Nian's face became even brighter. The flying knives increased their speed and were about to pierce the hot girl's feet, left hand, and forehead. Mo sure sighed in his heart. There was actually such a pervert in the world. Then, he used his telekinesis and was about to attack. After all, back at the dam, Hot Chick had protected him and Zombie Sister in name. But at this moment, a heart-wrenching scream suddenly came from the crowd. "Dad!" Everyone turned their heads to look at him. Lu Nian's flying knife also paused slightly. A 17 or 18-year-old girl rushed out from the crowd. He fell into the pile of hunter corpses beside him. Hugging Regiment Commander Yang Kang's corpse, he cried bitterly. Dad! Dad! Wake up! Everyone sighed inwardly when they saw this. It turned out that this girl was the daughter of Regiment Commander Yang Kong. About 10 years ago, Mo Shi had saved his family. At that time, she was only an 8-year-old girl. Now that more than 10 years had passed, she was already a 17 or 18-year-old girl. She had just seen those flying daggers about to pierce into the hot girl's body. He couldn't bear to look at her, so he subconsciously turned his head away. In the end, he accidentally saw Yang Kang's corpse in the pile of corpses beside him. That was why she cried out. At this moment, when the others saw the girl lying on top of Yang Kang's corpse, they were all shocked. The leader of the hunting group was the strongest person in the entire base. He had actually been killed. On the rostrum, Lu Nian's eyes lit up when he saw the girl. He shouted, "Bring her up here." One of the hunters walked over immediately. He grabbed the girl's shoulder and lifted her up. The girl kept struggling, crying and yelling, "Dad! Dad!" Because of too much grief, her voice was a little hoarse, but that hunter didn't relent at all. He grabbed the girl's shoulder and was about to bring her up to the rostrum. However, at this moment he suddenly felt a chill on his ankle. He looked down and suddenly felt his scalp tingle. He actually had goosebumps all over his body. He saw that his right ankle was tightly grabbed by a cold hand. And the owner of this hand was actually Yang Kang. He carefully looked at Yang Kang's chest and forehead. He saw that there was a chopstick-sized bloody hole in Yang Kang's chest and forehead. The bloody hole in his forehead went from his forehead to the back of his head. He was clearly dead. How could he move? Or rather, he didn't die at all. But how was this possible? His heart was pierced. His head was directly penetrated. How could he not die? He couldn't believe it. At the same time, he felt a chill in his heart. Did he see a ghost? Thinking of this, he suddenly lifted his right foot. But that ice-cold hand held onto his right foot tightly. So much so that his whole body was lifted off the ground. But Yang Kang, who didn't seem to have any consciousness, still didn't let go. Seeing this scene, the expressions of everyone present were all moved. Dad. Seeing that her father wasn't dead, Yang Kang's daughter immediately burst into tears. She kept struggling, wanting to rush to her father's side. On the rostrum, Lu Nian frowned slightly. He said to the hunter, "What are you waiting for?" That hunter immediately swung his leg. He threw Yang Kang far away. Then, he grabbed his daughter and brought her up to the rostrum. Lu Nian looked Yang Kang's daughter up and down for a moment, and couldn't help praising, "Good, good, good." His eyes flashed with excitement. Then, he waved his hand and said, "Take her aside first. When we're done here, I'll have a good talk with her." "Dad, my dad isn't dead yet. Save him. Please save him." Yang Kang's daughter knelt on the ground and begged bitterly, but Lu Nian didn't respond to her. He just reluctantly withdrew his gaze from her. Then, his gaze fell on the short-haired hot girl. He smiled brightly. "I hate short-haired women the most in my life, and I hate disobedient short-haired women even more. Now let's continue." As he spoke, the 4 throwing knives had already approached the hot girl. They kept moving in front of her. At the same time, Lu Nian's gaze swept over the more than 10,000 people. He joked, "I heard that there's a mysterious expert in your base. If there is, shouldn't he show up? But he still hasn't shown up. Isn't the so-called mysterious expert too cowardly?" He wanted to humiliate their so-called mysterious expert in front of everyone. He wanted to completely shatter the hope in their hearts. The smile on his face became wider, and his voice became louder. "Mysterious expert, listen carefully. If you're still a man, stand out. Otherwise, from now on, I'll kill one person every second." At this point, he signaled to a hunter with his eyes. "Let's begin." That hunter immediately walked into the crowd. Without saying anything, he stretched out his hand and slapped down on a middle-aged woman. The surrounding people all exclaimed. How terrifying was the hunter's strength. With this slap, this woman didn't even have the qualifications to become minced meat. she would probably be directly smashed into meat paste. Just as the crowd exclaimed, "Rip!" the hunter's body instantly split into several pieces. He was thrown far away in all directions. At this moment, the smile on Lu Nian's face suddenly froze. Chapter 74. That hunter was about to kill that woman. But in the next moment, there was a tearing sound. He had already been torn into several pieces, flying far away. Everyone present exclaimed in surprise. But in the next moment they reacted. A mysterious expert. In base C10, all the hunters' expressions changed. They didn't see anyone make a move. A hunter was suddenly torn apart just like that. He didn't even have the time to scream. This scene was too strange. One had to know that this was a level 5 hunter. His body was far stronger than ordinary people. To tear a level 5 hunter apart, one would need at least the strength of a level 6 hunter to do that. But in this situation, it was obvious that psychokinesis had made a move. But how was that possible? If a psychokinesis was strong enough, it wouldn't be a problem to detonate a hunter's head. But it was impossible to detonate a hunter's head. After all, even someone as strong as their captain Lu Nian couldn't detonate a hunter's head with just telekinesis. Not to mention tearing a hunter apart. If it could really be done, how strong would the psychokinesis be? On the rostrum, the bright smile on Lu Nian's face suddenly froze. As a level 6 psychokinesis, he knew how difficult it was to tear apart a body with telekinesis. Psychokinesis was strong because telekinesis was invisible and immaterial, and couldn't be defended against. If one controlled flying daggers, they could come and go without a trace. As for the power formed by telekinesis, it wasn't very strong. Level 6 psychokinesis could only control objects within 60 kilograms. With this kind of power, it was impossible to tear apart a normal person. Not to mention tearing apart a hunter whose body was hundreds or thousands of times stronger than a normal person. But now, that level 5 hunter had been torn apart so easily. It could be seen how terrifying the telekinesis of psychokinesis was. It was probably far beyond level 10 psychokinesis. It was an existence on another level. Because of this, the smile on Lu Nian's face froze. Tearing. Just as he hadn't come back to his senses. Another hunter's body was instantly torn into several pieces. He flew far away. Under the sun, only fresh blood was left. Tearing, 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 the sound of cloth being torn could be heard continuously. One by one, the hunters were torn apart. It didn't matter if it was a level 5 or level 6 hunter, or a level 7 hunter. No one was spared. The eyes of the level 8 hunter under Lu Nian's command were filled with terror. The mysterious expert had made his move. What those people said was true. That mysterious expert was actually so powerful. He was so strong that he couldn't even imagine it and couldn't comprehend it. When his first comrade was torn apart, he immediately scanned the crowd. He wanted to find that mysterious expert. As long as they could find him, more than 50 hunters would approach him at the same time. Together with Captain Lu Nian's level 6 psychokinesis. In that case, it shouldn't be difficult to take down this mysterious expert. But he soon realized how foolish and ignorant his idea was. That was because his companions were being rapidly torn apart one by one. His gaze swept through the crowd a few times, but he didn't find any abnormalities at all. He placed his hopes on Lu Nian. Lu Nian was also a powerful psychokinesis. He hoped that Lu Nian would be able to resist for a while or find that mysterious expert. However, he discovered that Lu Nian, who had never panicked before, had an extremely frightened expression on his face at this moment. Seeing this level 8 psychokinesis understood. Captain Lu Nian was far from being a match for that mysterious expert. He immediately regretted it in his heart. If he had known this would happen, he wouldn't have come to snatch base C1. Now that they were facing such a powerful psychokinesis, what could they do? The only thing they could do was to run. Only by running out of the range of that psychokinesis would they have a chance of survival. Thinking of this, he hurriedly ran into the distance. One step was 180 meters. Then he took a second step. However, he was only halfway through the second step. Tearing, his body was also torn into several pieces. His head flew more than 100 meters away and rolled at Lu Nian's feet. Lu Nian's face was already pale. He had tried to use his psychokinesis to resist just now. However, the moment his psychokinesis came out of his body, it was easily suppressed by a wave of psychokinesis that was as vast as the sea and as imposing as a mountain. At this moment, his psychokinesis could only be retracted back into his body. He couldn't even send out half of his psychokinesis. Tearing. He could only watch as his subordinates were torn into several pieces one by one. The 10,000 people below the rostrum were all surprised and happy at this moment. Although this scene looked very bloody, none of them felt that it was wrong. Little Bean looked at Emoshir's back from a few meters away. The shock in her heart was even greater than before. He didn't need to do anything. Just his thoughts were enough to tear these hunters apart. He could even tear apart a level 8 hunter. How strong was Emoshir now? In just half a year, Emoshir's psychokinesis seemed to have become many times stronger than when he went to base C9. This kind of growth speed was too shocking. Beside Emoshir, Old Li was so shocked that he couldn't close his legs for a long time. Happy was also surprised, his mouth slightly open. She looked at Brother Mo beside her. Brother Mo didn't move at all. It was as if all this wasn't done by him at all. Could it be that she was wrong? Brother Mo wasn't the mysterious powerhouse at all? But Brother Mo's expression was calm and composed. It was far from the shock and surprise of the people around him. Then, was he really the mysterious powerhouse? On the rostrum, Base Chief Ma Yangshir's eyes were filled with excitement. His gaze kept sweeping over the 10,000 people below the rostrum. He was trying to find the mysterious powerhouse. However, there were too many people. It was difficult to find him in a short time. Tearing, the sound of cloth being torn continued. The surrounding hunters all seemed to have gone crazy at this moment, crazily fleeing into the distance. However, none of the hunters were able to escape. On the contrary, the faster they ran, the faster they died. In the end, only 2 people were left. One was Lu Nian, whose face was pale and didn't move for a long time. The other was a level 5 hunter who didn't run from the beginning to the end. That level 5 hunter watched as his companion, who had just escaped 200 meters away, was torn into pieces by an invisible force. He shook his head in despair. He took one last look at Lu Nian and slowly closed his eyes. At the same time, he said loudly, "You can kill me, you can kill all of us, but please let Captain Lu go." Below the rostrum, among the 10,000 people, Emoshir's psychokinesis paused for a moment. It wasn't that he planned to let these 2 people go. These people were cruel and provoked him in public. This was a slap to his face in front of everyone. How could he let them go? He was just a little surprised. This hunter was about to die, but instead of thinking for himself, he begged him to let this cruel and perverted Lu Nian go. This was something he didn't expect. Chapter 75. After saying those words, the hunter waited for his body to be torn apart. To be honest, they had only themselves to blame for doing such a thing and being torn apart now. He could accept any result. However, after waiting for a moment, his body was not torn apart. He understood that the mysterious powerhouse had given him a chance to speak. He suddenly seemed to have grasped at the last life-saving straw. He hurriedly said, "Captain Lu is also a pitiful person. He has a sister who is a hunter. When the virus first broke out, his parents died. The siblings relied on each other. Later, the 2 of them became psychokinesis and hunter respectively. In recent years, the zombies and mutated beasts near our base C10 have become stronger and stronger for some reason. The activity range of our base's hunter group has been greatly reduced. The leader of the base knows that this can't go on, so he sent our team to contact other bases. He wants to find a way to transfer the 120,000 people in our base out. Of course, it's difficult. However, our base's hunter group is very strong. Although they are weaker than the monsters near our base, as long as we are away from base C10, our hunter group strength can sweep away any other creatures in the wilderness. We went to base C8 and base C7, but they refused to accept us. Later, Captain Lu brought us to contact base C6. In the end, the hunter group of base C6 said that they would accept us, but they secretly drugged our food with hallucinogens. All of us had hallucinations in our minds, and we didn't know what we were doing. Captain Lu's telekinesis is very strong, and he was the first to wake up. But when he woke up, he saw those people from base C6 killing our companions. And her sister was actually raped by a bastard from base C6. At this point, he had begun to gnash his teeth. At that time, Captain Lu's telekinesis had not fully recovered. He could only watch everything happen and watch that bastard kill his sister. Perhaps he was stimulated, but Captain Lu's telekinesis actually increased by 2 levels in a short period of time. Then, he killed hundreds of hunters from base C6 and escaped with us, who had just recovered a little bit of consciousness. Since then, Captain Lu changed. He became more and more cruel. We also understand him. I brought Commander Yang's daughter up just now because Commander Yang's daughter looks a lot like his sister. Everyone was silent when they heard this. No one was born a villain or a pervert. He must have suffered unbearable pain. On the rostrum, Lu Nian was already in tears. His legs gave way and he sat down on the ground. The 4 flying daggers were out of his control. Finally, with a few clangs, it fell to the ground. He did not cry out loud. Only the tears, which seemed to have been suppressed for a long time, finally found an outlet and gushed out. At this moment, he was no longer the ruthless and powerful psychokinesis from before. Instead, he looked like a child who had just lost his mother. The eyes of the base chief were no longer as sharp as before. Instead, it flickered slightly. Even the short-haired hot girl was somewhat moved. She seemed to have forgotten the pain in her hand and slowly opened her mouth to speak. Can we find a way to cripple his psychokinesis and then let the 2 of them leave? The level 5 hunter's voice was choked with sobs. He raised his voice. I've harmed so many people. Even death can't wipe out my crimes. But I beg you to let Captain Lu go. He's really a pitiful person. I beg you. Everyone was silent. However, Mosher did not think much of it. What a joke. You came to base C1 and killed so many people. You want me to let him go just by saying, pitiful person? Did he lose his brain when he was having diarrhea? There were many pitiful people in this world. There was a saying that a pitiful person must have something to hate. Since you dared to come to base C1 to kill people, then stay. Thinking of this, he was about to activate his psychokinesis. But at this moment, on the rostrum, Lu Nian, who was sitting on the ground, looked like a child who had just lost his mother. His psychokinesis suddenly probed out of his body. He tried to control the flying daggers that had just fallen to the ground. Mosher had been shrouding him with his psychokinesis. Naturally, he had already noticed when his psychokinesis had just probed out of his body. He suddenly understood. So that's how it is. It turned out that Lu Nian and that hunter were just acting. They knew that they would not be able to escape death today, so they put on such a sad show. Of course, looking at Lu Nian's painful appearance just now, it did not seem like it was an act. It was very likely that he had really encountered those things. But at this moment, they were using such a thing to win the sympathy of the crowd. At the same time, it was also to numb the mysterious powerhouse and make him lower his guard. As a psychokinesis, Lu Nian's psychokinesis was far inferior to Mosher's. But he could vaguely sense the location of the mysterious powerhouse's psychokinesis. He planned to wait for the mysterious powerhouse to lower his guard before he suddenly attacked. Using his psychokinesis to control the flying daggers, he would instantly kill the mysterious powerhouse. Even if the mysterious powerhouse was as powerful as the mysterious powerhouse, it would be very easy for a level 6 psychokinesis to sneak attack him if he was not prepared. In their eyes, this was their only chance. Thinking of this, Mosher sneered in his heart. How could a mere firefly dare to compete with the sun and the moon? Then his psychokinesis moved slightly. At this moment, Lu Nian's psychokinesis had just probed out of his body. He was still slightly delighted in his heart. The mysterious powerhouse's psychokinesis had indeed not noticed him. Then, his psychokinesis probed the flying daggers on the ground. However, at this moment, before his psychokinesis touched the flying daggers, an incomparably tyrannical psyche power, like a mountain, suddenly came crashing down from all directions. Lu Nian's psychokinesis did not have any resistance and was instantly suppressed back into his body. His expression changed drastically. His face was filled with horror. The next moment, Lu Nian heard the sound of his body being torn apart. It was not as clear as the sound of others. The tearing sound from his body was very loud. It was even a little ear-piercing. He also heard the sound of the hunter's body being torn apart. Both of their heads flew high into the air at the same time. Their consciousness still existed for a few seconds after their bodies died. In these few seconds, both of them were filled with incomparable fear, despair, and regret. If they had known that base C1 had such a powerful psychokinesis overseeing it, they would not have dared to come even if they were beaten to death. Mo coldly looked at the two people's bodies being torn into pieces. There was no expression on his face. The more than 10,000 people at the scene who were moved by Lu Nian's story all had a drastic change in expression. Even the chief of the base, Ma Yangshi, was shocked. They did not know that Lu Nian planned to use psychokinesis to sneak attack. In their opinion, Lu Nian was indeed very pitiful. They were even considering whether to give Lu Nian a lighter punishment. They could break his hands and feet or cripple his psychokinesis. They could let him reform in the farm of base C1 or use other methods, but at least spare his life. But no one expected that the mysterious powerhouse would not give him a chance at all. Instantly torn apart. This made everyone's hearts. In addition to respect for the mysterious powerhouse, there was also a lot of fear and dread. The mysterious powerhouse had indeed saved the base several times. But he was not a saint, nor was he a good person, nor was he a soft-hearted person. Chapter 76. On the field in front of the rostrum, everyone was awestruck. Before, they had pure worship or respect for the mysterious strong man. But from now on, everyone had a trace of fear for the mysterious strong man. Together, it was awe, respect, and fear. Many people were moved by Lu Nian's story. If it were them, they would probably destroy Lu Nian's mind power and let him go. Even those who were more hard-hearted and never intended to let Lu Nian go would hesitate for a moment. However, the mysterious strong man did not hesitate at all. Lu Nian was instantly torn into pieces by the strong mind power. It was obvious that the mysterious strong man was not a good person. He was not a saint or a soft-hearted person. In the past, some people would occasionally complain. They said that the mysterious strong man should show up. Since he was so strong, he should lead the hunting group and set an example for everyone. The greater the power, the greater the responsibility. But now, no one dared to have such thoughts. Perhaps it was a good thing for them that the mysterious strong man did not show up. Not far from Emoshir, Xiao Dou stared at Emoshir's back. His eyes were full of shock. When he was in the zombie farm, he always thought that Emoshir was a very easygoing person. He was not ambitious and stood aloof from worldly affairs. He was content with the status quo. Later, at base C9, he realized that Emoshir was not as easygoing as he seemed. Millions of corpses and rivers of blood. But now he knew that he was wrong. Emoshir was not only cruel to zombies, but also to humans. He was ruthless and decisive. Not only were the enemies afraid of him, but even the people in the base began to revere him. Beneath his easygoing and tranquil appearance was an incomparably tyrannical strength and decisive means of killing. The psychological impact of this contrast was simply too great. It seemed that he should stay away from Emoshir if he had nothing to do in the future. The farther the better. On the rostrum, the base chief did not expect the mysterious strong man to be so ruthless. After a moment of shock, he suddenly remembered something. He hurriedly shouted, "Find a doctor and save Commander Yang." Only then did the crowd recover from the shock from before. Yang Kang's daughter also ran in the direction of Yang Kang again. Soon, the doctor made a simple diagnosis. Then, he raised his head and said in disbelief, "His heart and head were pierced, but he's still alive. This is simply a miracle." The base chief hurriedly asked, "Could it be because he's a hunter and his body is much stronger than ordinary people?" The doctor shook his head and replied, "Although this is also a factor, the most important factor is his own willpower. He must have something unfinished or someone he can't let go of." When the members of the body hunters heard this, they all looked at Yang Kang's daughter, Yang Xiaoyan. They all knew how much Commander Yang loved his daughter. His wife had passed away several years ago. He had raised his daughter all by himself. Other than the work of the hunting group, he spent almost all his energy on his daughter. If there was someone in his heart that he couldn't let go of, it would definitely be his daughter, Yang Xiaoyan. "It's his daughter, Yang Xiaoyan," the corpse hunter said. When everyone heard this, they also recalled the scene just now. Yang Kang's heart and head were clearly pierced, and it had been 6 or 7 hours since he was pierced. If it was anyone else, they would have died long ago. But not only did he not die, and when his daughter was taken away, he actually reached out and grabbed the hunter's ankle. How strong must his willpower be to be able to do that? No matter how strong his willpower was, he couldn't do that. Perhaps only a father like him could do that. At this moment, they looked at Yang Kang again. His right hand was still grabbing the hunter's ankle. When the doctor carefully examined it, he found that the bones in his hand were broken. It was obviously broken when the hunter tried to shake off his hand. Everyone was shocked again. A father's love was so great. A few corpse hunters, with reverence, carefully carried Yang Kang onto the stretcher. They slowly sent him to the infirmary of the hunting group. Everywhere they passed, everyone stared at the unconscious Yang Kang. Yang Kang's daughter, Yang Xiaoyan, had been holding her father's hand tightly. Tears had already blurred her eyes. In fact, no one knew that there were 3 reasons why Yang Kang was still alive. First, it was his physique. Second, it was because he was worried. Third, it was because he had taken the recovery medicine given by Mo. At that time, he was just an ordinary person. He couldn't completely digest the medicine. After nearly 10 years, the medicine was already less than 1/10 of it. The remaining trace of medicine, although it couldn't completely restore him. However, he was barely able to hang on to his last breath. Otherwise, no matter how strong his willpower was, he couldn't have survived such a serious injury. From this, it could be seen how crazy the recovery medicine produced by the system was. But at this time, Mo didn't know this. He didn't plan to give Yang Kang another bottle of recovery medicine. With Yang Kang's physique, since he could live until now, it shouldn't be difficult for him to keep his life. At this time, his gaze fell on the hot short-haired girl on the rostrum. There were thousands of corpse hunters in the hunting group, and tens of thousands of people present. She was the only one who dared to curse at Lun Yen, and she knew that as long as she endured for a while, she would be safe when the mysterious expert made his move. But she still refused to surrender. Even if she raised her hand for a second, it would be humiliating for her. How could a girl be so unyielding to such an extent? It made all the men present blush with shame. Mo also admired him in his heart. A moment later, the base chief began to instruct everyone to deal with the corpses. At the same time, he also sent out some corpse hunters to persuade these civilians to go back first. Mo also followed the crowd and walked towards the corpse field. As he walked, he recalled the feeling of using his telekinesis to tear those people apart. In fact, although he had reached level 9 psychokinesis, he could only lift things under 90 kilograms. With this kind of strength, it was impossible to tear a human body apart. However, after reaching level 9, his telekinesis was able to probe the human body to the finest detail. Which muscles of the human body were the easiest to tear, which bones were the weakest. Where had there been a fracture or an injury? He could easily detect all of this with just a probing of his mind power. Then he could start from these places and combine it with the strength of 90 kilograms and below to do all this. The principle was like a skilled butcher dismembering a cow. Once he was familiar with the structure of the cow's body, he could do it with ease. Mo sure thought to himself that when his telekinesis was stronger in the future, even if he encountered those powerful mutated zombies, he could easily dismember their bodies. That night, after 12 o'clock, Mo sure, as usual, planned to double and specify the rewards. But he suddenly had a thought. He had just done such a big thing today. Maybe he could try and see if he could sign other good things. Chapter 77. According to Mo Sher's original understanding, the event's sign-in mechanism had to be immediately signed in right after the event was completed. Now that an entire day had passed, the sign-in probably wouldn't have any effect at all. But how would he know if he didn't give it a try? Thinking of this, Mo Sher asked in his mind, "System, can I still use the event sign-in now?" The system's voice sounded frowny face yes. Mo Sher was a little surprised and asked, "Didn't you say that only after signing in immediately after doing a specific event can there be a specific event reward?" The system's voice sounded frowny face. The system never said that. The host has misunderstood. Mo Sher was a little speechless. It turned out that his understanding of the event reward mechanism had been wrong for such a long time. Thinking about it carefully, the system didn't seem to say that he had to sign in immediately after doing something to activate the event reward mechanism. Then let's sign in. Mo Sher rubbed his hands expectantly. Sign in successful. Sign in event. Use psychokinesis to tear apart the enemy. Sign in reward. Doomsday tier. Memory plunder. Huh? Mo Sher was a little surprised. It turned out to be 2 skills. In the past, only when the system upgraded would there be more than 2 skill rewards. Pleasantly surprised, he opened the skill description. Doomsday tier. Within the range of psychokinesis, you can use psychokinesis to find the enemy's weakness and tear it apart. OE skills consume a lot of psychokinesis. Use with caution. Memory plunder. You can use psychokinesis to forcibly plunder the memories of others. The person whose memories are plundered will have a strong impact on the brain and will lose their memories. Their intelligence will also be irreversibly damaged. Use with caution. Mo Sher was secretly shocked when he saw the descriptions of these 2 skills. These 2 skills were very violent and domineering skills. This was probably in line with the temperament of a dragon. Especially this memory plunder. Mo Sher actually wanted to ask Lu Nian and the others about base C10 during the day. What exactly happened there? The mutated beasts and zombies nearby were actually stronger than other places. But there were too many people during the day, so it wasn't easy to ask. He couldn't be bothered to do anything else. In any case, he didn't plan to leave base C1 for the time being. He would think about it when he went out later. Therefore, he killed them all on the spot. But now that he had memory plunder, if he encountered such a situation in the future, he would directly plunder their memories. Wouldn't that save a lot of trouble? In the future, with these 2 skills, he would have 2 more trump cards. Thinking of this, he shook his head helplessly and sighed. He had too many trump cards. Sometimes he didn't even know which one to play. This was also a happy annoyance. The next day, Mo Sher resumed his peaceful life. As for how the body hunters would regroup and how Yang Kong would recover, that was not his concern. However, while they were chatting, he heard Oldly mention something. Little Mo, that hot chick from yesterday, do you know why he would rather die than surrender? Mo Sher was interested in this matter and asked, "What's wrong?" Happy had just gotten some food from the cafeteria, and he passed it to Mo Sher and Oldly. He also looked at Oldly curiously. Oldly opened the lunchbox and drank a mouthful of porridge. He said, "Happy is a good child. Whoever marries her will definitely be blessed by 8 generations of ancestors." As he spoke, he glanced at Mo Sher intentionally. Mo Sher also drank a mouthful of porridge and said, "You sound like you're scolding someone." Oldly glared at Mo Sher. He thought to himself, "This kid always interrupts when we're talking about serious matters." He shook his head and continued, "I heard from Mr. Wong, who wears bottle-bottom glasses, that when Hot Chick was young, The base had not been built yet. The zombie virus had just arrived, and the world was in chaos. In order to fight for supplies, people would kill and set fires. They would do anything. One day, a gunman broke into their house. He snatched a big bag of food and water and even shot her mother to death. At that time, when the gunman was packing the food and water, he put down the gun. Hot Chick always thought that if her father had been braver, he could have pounced on him and snatched the gun. That way, her mother would not have been shot to death. But at that time, her father kept his hands up and stood facing the wall, trembling. From then on, she hated seeing people raise their hands the most. Hence, yesterday, she would rather die than raise her hands for even a second. When Emoshur and Happy heard this, they both sighed. Oldly sighed in the end. There are all kinds of fathers in this world. There are Yang Kong who misses his daughter so much that he has to force himself to endure even when he's injured. There are also fathers like Hot Chick's father, Sai. At the same time, in Chief Ma Yangshur's office, Chief Ma Yangshur was sitting behind his desk. The bruises on his face had not completely disappeared. There were two people sitting on the sofa in front of his desk. One of them was the vice leader of the hunter group, Guojutao, who had always been a little sissy. 2 days ago, he led a team of 10 people to explore the area around the base. He had just returned today. The other person was the person in charge of the base's laboratory, a woman, Professor Chen. Chief Ma Yangshur looked at Guojutao and said in a low voice, "The doctor said that Leader Yang's life can be saved." Guojutao was instantly delighted and said in a sissy voice, "That's great. With the leader's body, it won't be long before he fully recovers. The leader is the soul of the hunter group. The hunter group can't do without him." Chief Ma Yangshur did not have a hint of joy on his face. However, although his life can be saved, the injury to his heart is too serious. Even if he recovers, he won't be able to do strenuous exercise in the future. In other words, he will become a normal person. The joy on Guojutao's face instantly froze. "This, Chief, are you joking?" Chief Ma Yangshur did not answer. However, Guojutao already knew the answer from his gloomy face. Guojutao was a little confused. He thought that the leader would return soon. He did not expect this to be the result. Ma Yangshur also sighed. "So, you have to take up the responsibility of the leader of the hunter group and reorganize the hunter group." Guojutao's face showed panic. Since the beginning of the hunter group, he had always been the leader's assistant. Later, in the body hunters, he was also the deputy leader. Until now, he was the deputy leader. He had never been the leader. Now, the base chief suddenly asked him to be the leader. He could not do it at all. And he knew that he was a little sissy. Although he hated it when others said that about him, he knew in his heart that it was the truth. How could he be the leader? Who would be convinced by him? Chief Ma Yangshur's gaze slowly moved to Guojutao's face. Staring into his eyes, he said, "I believe that you can do it well. Moreover, this is an order." Guojutao hesitated for a moment and finally puffed out his chest. "Chief, I promise to complete the mission." Although he was still a little nervous, he also knew that in the current situation, it seemed that no one in the hunter group could take on this responsibility except him. Ma Yangshur nodded. Then he looked at Dr. Chun in the laboratory. "Dr. Chun, the mutated zombies and mutated beasts outside are getting stronger and stronger. Our hunter group suffered heavy losses at this time. If the zombies attack the city soon, I'm afraid we won't be able to resist at all. Although there is a mysterious strong man in charge, we can't rely on him forever. After all, a person like the mysterious strong man can't stay in the base forever. Therefore, I want you to restart Project X." Dr. Chen's expression changed slightly. "Project X? Chief, the mutated zombies created by Project X are indeed much stronger than the naturally mutated zombies outside the base. But the uncertainty is also much greater. The mutated zombies we created went out of control and killed more than a dozen researchers. Then they broke into the zombie farm. It almost caused a disaster. Even now, I still wake up from my dreams. I'm afraid it's not appropriate to restart Project X now." Ma Yangshur shook his head. Last time, we underestimated the strength of the man-made mutated zombies. This time, we have a sample and a certain amount of data. We are fully prepared. If we combine it with the mutated zombie blood that Lu Nian brought, we might be able to create a stronger mutated zombie that will listen to our orders. Dr. Chun was nervous when he heard this crazy plan, but he was also slightly excited. Chapter 78. Ma Yangshi's so-called Project X was to create mutated zombies. In the past, Ma Yangshi had discovered that the zombies in the wilderness were getting stronger and stronger. He had already predicted that the zombies would attack the city in the future. With the few firearms that humans had, they would definitely not be able to resist. So he ordered the laboratory to try to artificially create mutated zombies. Then he would think of a way to tame these mutated zombies and let them be used by humans. If they succeeded, humans would have a great advantage in the battle against zombies in the future. The mutated zombies that they created were indeed very strong, dozens of times stronger than the mutated zombies in the wilderness. But they were extremely unstable and easy to lose control. This was why the mutated zombies escaped from the laboratory that year. Since then, Ma Yangshi had put Project X on hold. Until now, powerful mutated zombies had appeared in the wilderness, and their hunting group had suffered heavy losses. So he wanted to restart Project X again. While Dr. Chun was nervous, he was also a little excited. It was her lifelong regret that she couldn't continue with Project X back then. Now, the leader had finally ordered to restart it. How could this not make her excited? After the leader of the base finished these two things, he seemed to have finally fulfilled his wish. He leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes tiredly. In the next few days, Mo Shi still signed in every day, raised pigs and fed zombies. Different from the past, this time he did not hear anyone talking about the mysterious strong man. There were even many people who avoided the words, mysterious expert. Obviously, Mo Shi's ruthless methods that day made these people in awe. They no longer dared to casually talk about him. Mo Shi was also happy to be quiet. In the base, there were big news from time to time. The biggest news was that the leader of the base had resigned. It had been more than 20 years since the base was established. During this period, the leader had been leading the base. Whether it was his leadership ability or his sense of responsibility, there was nothing to say. Everyone was sincerely convinced by him. Never would they have thought that the leader would suddenly resign. In the yard, Mo Shi and Oldly finished feeding the pigs and zombies. The two were still chatting under the grape trellis. Recently, there have been more and more zombies sent to the zombie farm. It's a little too busy. Oldly sighed as he massaged his waist. Mo Shi nodded. There's a lot of demand in the lab, so our corpses are naturally busy. Oldly said, I'm old, and my legs aren't good. It's been a busy day, and I can't take it anymore. Happy is a girl, and she might not be able to handle such heavy work. Shouldn't the leader send more people over? Mo Shi nodded again. I think since the leader is so understanding, he should know. Just as they were talking, footsteps sounded outside the door. Two people walked in from outside the door. One of them was a leader, and the other was the chief of the base, Ma Yangshi. Oldly immediately stood up with a nervous and surprised expression on his face. The chief was a big shot. When had he ever come to a corpse farm? He had been in the base for more than 20 years, but he had never been so close to the chief. Chief, why are you here? Oldly felt a little uneasy. Ma Yangshi seemed to have aged a lot in these few days. He smiled. Oldly, right? You can call me Old Ma. I'm no longer the chief. Oldly was an honest man. He naturally could not change the way he addressed Ma Yangshi. Ma Yangshi's expression was a little gloomy. I made a mistake, so I should be punished. I asked the new chief to punish me, but he refused no matter what. I had no choice, so I could only punish myself. I sent myself here. The smile on his face was obviously a little pale. Old Li's face was filled with disbelief. The chief of the base was a person who stood at the top of the base. And the corpse farm was a job that was looked down upon the most. The chief of the base actually came here to raise corpses. This was something he did not even dare to dream of in the past. The leader said to Old Lee, "All right, Old Lee. We'll do whatever the chief says. In the future, you have to take care of the chief. Otherwise, I won't forgive you." Old Lee quickly nodded. Yes. Ma Yongshur said, "I told you, I'm a normal person now. Don't call me chief anymore." Then, he looked at Mo Sure and Happy and smiled. "You must be young Mo and Happy. I'm a complete newbie now. I'll need you to take care of me." Happy was a little flustered. After all, no matter what, he was still the chief of the base. A person who stood high above others. Mo Sure was the only one who smiled generously. "No problem." Over the next few days, Mo Sure and Happy brought Old Ma to familiarize himself with the work and the environment. Old Lee still could not change the way he addressed Ma Yongshur and kept calling him chief. Only Mo Sure called him Old Ma generously. This made Old Ma feel very comfortable. Due to Old Ma's arrival, the number of guests in the corpse farm also increased. However, Old Ma did not seem to be willing to meet people. Gradually, the number of people who came became fewer and fewer. The corpse farm returned to its former peace. A few days later, when Old Ma familiarized himself with the work, more than 20 zombies and 10 pigs were transferred to the corpse farm. These zombies and pigs would be under Old Ma's care in the future. Old Ma was quite nimble and diligent in his work. Moreover, he treated people warmly and did not have the air of a former chief. Therefore, he quickly gained the favor of the people in the corpse farm. However, this everyone did not include Mo Sure. He always felt that there was something fishy about this matter. As for what exactly was fishy, he could not tell. It was just a feeling. Mo Sure secretly guessed in his heart that Ma Yongshur had come for him. Could it be that he already knew that he was the mysterious powerhouse? However, the current Mo Sure did not care whether his identity was exposed or not. In front of his absolute strength, any schemes were just a joke. The reason why he did not take the initiative to expose himself was because he loved peace and was afraid of trouble. Every day, after finishing the work in the corpse farm, he had nothing else to do and was free. However, he was still a little curious about Ma Yongshur's goal. Therefore, in the next few days after Mo Sure finished feeding the zombies and pigs, he seemed to be resting under the grape trellis. However, he had already sent out his psychic power to observe Old Ma's every move. Sure enough, as soon as he probed, he found out that something was wrong. These days, there was a great demand for zombies in the laboratory. The hunting group caught zombies from outside the base and brought them to the corpse farm. In a few days, these zombies would be taken away by the laboratory. As the saying goes, the corpse farm was made of iron and the zombies flowed like water. However, among the zombies raised by Ma Yongshur, there was one zombie that had been raised in the zombie room and had never been taken away. Moreover, every time Ma Yongshur went in to feed this zombie, he always stayed longer than in other corpse farms. There was even one time when Ma Yongshur's eyes were shining with tears when he faced this zombie. Mo Sure couldn't help but become curious. Chapter 79. Mo Sure used his telekinesis to detect that Ma Yongshur was actually crying to a zombie. A living person would shed tears for a zombie. Mo Sure was puzzled and carefully examined the zombie again. This was a female zombie. She was about 30 years old. Other than the obvious claw marks on her neck, there were no other injuries. And every time Ma Yongshur saw this female zombie, his eyes were filled with pain. After detecting this and combining it with Ma Yongshur's behavior, Mo Sure suddenly realized something. A human being could have feelings for a zombie. There were only two possibilities. 1. This person was obsessed with corpses. This had happened in the base before. 2. This zombie was once this person's true love. Obviously, Ma Yongshur should be the latter. Combined with Ma Yongshur's age, Mo Sure guessed that this female zombie should have been his girlfriend or wife. More than 20 years had passed, and the appearance of zombies had not changed much. And Ma Yongshur was already old. Emoshir guessed this and couldn't help but be moved. So that was it. Ma Yongshir was the real zombie keeper. After this woman became a zombie, he didn't abandon her. Instead, he kept her until now. He kept her for more than 20 years. One must know that when the base was first established, people hated zombies to the extreme. Zombies destroyed the whole world, destroyed their families, harmed their parents, children, and loved ones. They had long hated zombies to the bone. So a few years later, when the zombie farm was established, it was after countless discussions and tremendous pressure that the zombie farm was built. In that kind of environment, if someone raised a zombie privately, he would probably be beaten to death immediately. It was conceivable that Ma Yongshir wanted to raise a zombie without anyone knowing, and for more than 20 years. How difficult was it? It also showed how deep his love for this woman was. After discovering this, Emoshir's heart had a little more respect for Ma Yongshir. However, that was all. When he saw Ma Yongshir again, Emoshir acted as if he didn't know about this at all. This was Ma Yongshir's business. As long as it didn't affect his comfortable life, Emoshir was too lazy to meddle in other people's business. In the blink of an eye, another 3 months had passed. Over the past 3 months, Emoshir's psychokinesis finally showed signs of a breakthrough through the continuous injections of brain cell enhancers. At midnight that night, Emoshir decided to sign in 10 bottles of the enhanced version of brain cell enhancer. He injected these enhancers into his body one by one. With the strength of his body now, it was naturally impossible for an ordinary syringe to penetrate his body. However, the syringes he received from the system were all made of special materials and were extremely sharp. On top of that, Emoshir's telekinesis allowed him to detect the most minute details. It could find the most vulnerable part of the skin. Furthermore, his strength was far from what an ordinary person could compare to. That was why it could easily pierce through the skin. Soon, the 8th injection was completed. At this moment, he felt his head begin to heat up. His heart skipped a beat. I'm finally going to break through. He then put the remaining 2 syringes into his backpack. Then, he used his telekinesis to observe the medicinal power that had just entered his body. The medicinal effect flowed through his blood vessels and headed straight for his brain. In the brain, it spread along the capillaries. Along with the spread of the medicinal effect, his telekinesis also spread out instantly. His telekinesis covered a radius of 900 meters. However, as the medicinal effect took effect, the range of his telekinesis rapidly expanded. 910 meters, 930 meters, 991 meters, 1,000 meters. Within a radius of 1,000 meters, any movement in the wind or grass could be seen. He could easily detect 2 mosquitoes flirting with each other in the warehouse 1,000 meters away. At the same time, as long as it was less than 100 kilograms, he could lift it. In other words, with his current telekinesis, he could casually lift a person. Of course, the increase in the power of telekinesis was only secondary. The most important thing was that after his telekinesis reached level 10, his use of telekinesis would become more skillful and natural. In the past, when he was level 8, he could use his telekinesis to multitask. Now that he had become a level 10 telekinesis master, his telekinesis was able to do 3 things at once. Moreover, after his telekinesis reached level 10, the most terrifying thing was that his combat strength had greatly increased. He could feel that with his current telekinesis, even if he were to face a level 10 strong mutated zombie, he could easily blow up their heads with just a thought. This made Emoshir slightly excited. Then, he picked up the 9th brain cell enhancer and injected it into his body. He had a hunch that level 10 of psychokinesis was not the end. He still had a long way to go to be invincible in the world. However, this time, when the medicinal effect entered his body and rushed into his brain, it did not act on his brain cells. Instead, after circulating in his body, it was discharged through his sweat pores. Emoshir smiled bitterly. It seemed that his telekinesis had been raised to the limit. If he wanted to raise it further, it was not something that could be done by the medicinal effect. He had to find the right opportunity. However, this matter could not be rushed. Fortunately, now that his telekinesis had increased, he could detect the changes in the medicinal effect when it entered his body. It would not be like when he reached the limit of a zombie hunter and wasted a lot of enhancers. Next, it was time to increase his physical strength. At midnight the next day, Mo signed in and received 10 Titan Dragon gene enhancers. They were injected into his body. He estimated that he would be able to break through in 3 months at most. At that time, his hunter psychokinesis would reach the peak of level 10 at the same time. Thinking about it, he was really looking forward to it. However, on this day, another uninvited guest appeared in the base. It was a man and a woman. The man was a hunter. The woman was a psychokinesis. What was even more surprising was that they were actually flying a helicopter over. One had to know that monsters were everywhere outside the base. Naturally, no one was mining oil. Things like helicopters, which consumed a lot of fuel, could not fly anymore. The people of Base C1 had not seen a helicopter fly for more than 10 years. Now that these two people were driving a helicopter, it was surprising. However, the people of the base were only surprised. They treated these two people extremely coldly. After the incident with Lu Wang and Lu Nian, they were quite repulsed by outsiders. Therefore, as soon as the helicopter landed, they took control of the man and woman. After the interrogation of the new chief of the base, they learned that the man and woman were from Base C2. Their Base C2 happened to be built near an oil field. It took them nearly 5 years to recover the oil field, and this time they came out to contact the other bases. The mutated beasts and mutated zombies were getting stronger and stronger, and humans seemed to be facing a real extinction. Therefore, they were ordered by the chief of the base to contact the other bases to find a solution. In the zombie farm, when Doomsday heard Old Lee say that these two people were from Base C2, he could not help but be moved. Base C2 was only 100 kilometers away from the Draconic ruins. Chapter 80. According to the map that Mosher had obtained, there were many people in the area. The location of the Dragon Ruins was more than 100 kilometers away from Base C2. Mosher was not very strong before, so he did not go there. But now that his telekinesis had reached level 10, he was almost invincible in the wilderness. And he had a trump card like the Dragon Shadow Step. If he encountered danger, he could escape if he could not win. He was a little tempted. When the two of them left, should he leave with them? However, before they could leave, strange things happened in the base. On this day, Mosher was feeding zombies in the base. Suddenly, he heard a soft sound coming from afar. Puff! If it was an ordinary person, it would be impossible to hear it from so far away. Even hunters could not do it. But Mosher, as a psychokinesis, caught this soft sound. However, he did not care. But half a day later, there was news. The captain of the hunting group 1, Little Bean, was assassinated. Although it did not hit the vital parts, Little Bean's life was saved. But this matter attracted the attention of the entire Base C1. After all, attacking a member of the hunting group had never happened before. The members of the hunting group were all very strong, and their duty was to protect the safety of the entire base. Therefore, most people were very respectful to the members of the hunting group and would not harm them. Even if the members of the hunting group had conflicts, they would not be stupid enough to shoot in the base. They could easily find a place outside the base to harm the other party, and it would not easily arouse suspicion. So who was it? Why did they do this? Many people pointed the finger of suspicion at the two people from Base C2. However, the two of them had alibis. The new chief of the base ordered the body hunters to investigate this matter thoroughly. However, no one would have thought. This was just the beginning. 3 days later, it was lunchtime. Suddenly, a roar came from the direction of the laboratory. Roar, roar. Then, an ear-piercing alarm sounded. Beep, beep, beep. Then, there were screams in the laboratory. Boom, another loud sound came. Mosher used his telekinesis to check. He found that the door of the laboratory, which was used to resist rockets, was directly blown out. Then, a huge guy with a height of 3 meters jumped out. This guy did not have an upper lip, so his sharp teeth were exposed. It looked extremely ugly. On his shoulders, there were several bone spurs as thick as fingers. His entire right arm had transformed into a 2-meter-long sharp blade. His left arm transformed into a 3-meter-long axe. When Mo-Shur's telekinesis probed this guy, he was speechless. Those fellows in the laboratory didn't learn from their mistakes. He had created such a monster again. However, this time, Mo-Shur did not intend to make a move. With the strength of the body hunters, it shouldn't be difficult to deal with this mutant zombie. The mutated zombie wreaked havoc at the entrance of the laboratory. The corpse-hunting team rushed over after hearing the news and hurriedly used their guns and rockets to force it back into the laboratory. But he didn't expect it to backfire. This mutated zombie, after being bombarded by the artillery, actually turned around and rushed straight to the corpse farm. Mo-Shur shook his head helplessly. He wondered if he had gone back in time to 6 or 7 years ago. In the other rooms of the corpse farm, Old Li, Happy, and the former Chief Ma Yongshur were all nervously hiding in their own rooms. But different from Old Li and Ma Yongshur, Happy even looked at Mo-Shur's room through the crack in the window from time to time. Would Brother Mo make a move? If a monster rushed in, would she be able to see Brother Mo make a move for the first time? However, it was obvious that she was going to be disappointed. When the mutated zombie jumped 5 meters and was about to jump in from the wall of the corpse farm. Bang! There was a loud noise. A foot kicked the head of the mutated zombie. The mutated zombie was immediately sent flying. The person who came was a hunter from the body hunters. With him, it was easy to deal with the mutated zombie. Happy couldn't help but feel slightly disappointed. Fortunately, it didn't cause much damage. However, after this incident, many people began to feel nervous. More people pointed their fingers at the man and woman in base C2. When Mo-Shur and Happy went to the cafeteria to eat, they heard the discussion. Before those two people came, everything in the base was fine. A few days after they arrived, Captain Littlebean was attacked, and the murderer hasn't been found yet. Now the mutated zombie is out again. It must be them. If it's not them, who else could it be? In my opinion, they should be sentenced to death. Or at the very least, they should be chased out of the base. Another person said, the lab didn't learn from their mistakes. 6 or 7 years ago, the mutated zombie killed so many people. They actually dared to study mutated zombies. They were just following orders. I heard that the research this time was ordered by the former chief. He said that he wanted to study mutated zombies that could be commanded to increase the overall strength of the base. Oh, if that's the case, then there's no problem. Because of the previous incident, Chief Ma took the blame and resigned. He even sent himself to the corpse farm. There's nothing to say about this kind of person. I'm just worried that this will create stronger monsters and destroy the entire base. There's nothing we can do about it. The zombies outside are getting stronger and stronger. If we don't do this, the base will still be destroyed. It's just a matter of time. I think Chief Ma did the right thing. When Mo-Shur heard this, he felt that it was a little strange. As for what was strange, he couldn't figure it out. Since he couldn't figure it out, he was too lazy to think about it. In short, it was fine as long as it wasn't directed at him. Even if it was directed at him, with his strength, the other party would just be digging their own graves. After the mutated zombie incident, the man and woman from Base C2 were directly quarantined for 3 days. After the body hunters investigated and confirmed that it wasn't them who did it, they were released. If it was an ordinary person, they would have left immediately after receiving this kind of treatment. But this man and woman were very abnormal. Not only did they not leave immediately, but they also strolled around the base. They seemed to be very interested in the laboratory and the corpse farm. Even if they were pointed at by passers-by, they still acted as if nothing happened. Of course, they couldn't enter the laboratory. They walked around the laboratory a few times. Then they came to the corpse farm. After Mo-Shur finished feeding the zombies, he was basking in the sun with Old Li and Old Ma in the yard and chatting. Happy was mending a camouflage uniform that Mo-Shur had punctured. In this apocalyptic world, resources were scarce. Of course, cloth was also very scarce. People's clothes were usually mended over and over again until they couldn't be mended anymore. Then, they would change into a slightly newer set of old clothes. When they heard the sound of footsteps, they looked up. They saw the man and woman walking in. The man was in his 30s and had a scar at the corner of his eye. The woman was also in her 30s and was wearing a tight leather jacket. She looked valiant and heroic, but also sexy. Old Lee, who had always been honest, couldn't help but frown when he saw these two people. Although he wasn't sure if these two people had anything to do with the two incidents, it was true that after these two people arrived, strange things began to happen. Happy subconsciously moved closer to Mo. The former chief, Old Ma, was very enthusiastic. "You're here. Take a seat. I'll get you some water." The man glanced at the four people. When he saw Happy, his eyes couldn't help but light up. "You're tuning in to the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.